Chapter 28. Grandmother, please accept a bow from your granddaughter. Qin Yining did not dare to be arrogant. She stopped and bowed. The people who came with her naturally avoided her. Duchess Ding's eyes became softer and softer. She held her hand with both hands and said with pity, "Good girl, you don't have to be so polite. Let me take a good look at you." Duchess Ding's hands were dry and warm, which was unique to old people. The heat transmitted to Qin Yining's eyes made her involuntarily tear up. Duchess Ding only looked at Qin Yining's watery eyes, and her heart softened. Some people were fated to like each other at first sight. Duchess Ding looked at Qin Yining like this. Duchess Ding's fingers felt the calluses and scars on Qin Yining's hands. Her heart ached. She held her in her arms and patted her. She choked back sobs and said, "Poor child, you have suffered all these years." Her words made Qin Yining's tears fall uncontrollably. The warm and soft embrace and the elegant incense on Duchess Ding's body touched the softest and most fragile part of her heart. She forced herself not to cry at this good time. "Grandmother, don't be sad. No matter what happened in the past, it's all in the past. Let's look forward. There's no need to look back." These words went straight to Duchess Ding's heart. She nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, it's all in the past. It's all in the past." Eldest aunt and second aunt, who had been moved and kept wiping their tears, also nodded hurriedly. Even the Sun clan, who had been emotional after finding their daughter, couldn't help crying for a while. The scene of hugging and crying in the cold wind was too sad. Eldest aunt sniffed and said, "Look at how happy Mother is. She doesn't even care about the weather. Why did she come out wearing the soft shoes in the room? Put them on carefully." Mother Bao wiped the corners of her eyes with her sleeve and said cooperatively, "Old Madam can't wait to see her granddaughter. She won't even let me help her change her shoes." "You're talking about me? I don't know who can't sit still here." Duchess Ding teased her two daughters-in-law. The sorrowful atmosphere was diluted, and only joy remained. Everyone laughed and jostled into the room. Even the little girl who lifted the curtain was full of smiles, as if she was celebrating the new year. Qin Yining had been smiling with tears in his eyes the entire time. He listened to his aunt and grandmother talking about their concern for him, but he couldn't get a word in edgewise. She had fantasized about this scene countless times on her way back to the capital from Liang City. Who would have thought that what he couldn't get in his own family, he would get it in his maternal grandparents' house? Last night, she tossed and turned in bed, thinking of all those unexpected situations and solutions. It seemed that all of them were useless. She was the one who was worrying for nothing and had the heart of a villain. Duchess Ding was served by her two daughters-in-law and sat at the head of the table. Eldest aunt, second aunt, and the members of the Sun clan sat on the side. Mama Bao brought a praying mat for Qin Yining. Qin Yining knelt down and bowed respectfully. "Granddaughter greets grandmother and aunts." "Get up, get up." Duchess Ding leaned over to support her and pulled her up to sit next to her. "Are you used to living here? Do you still lack anything? Your mother has a bad temper and is careless. If she dares to neglect you carelessly, come and tell grandmother that I hit her." Duchess Ding spoke so quickly that Qin Yining couldn't get a word in edgewise. She could only shake her head repeatedly, indicating that she hadn't been neglected. "Mother, you're biased. Now that Sister E is here, she's better than me." The members of the Sun clan's face flushed when they heard their biological mother's words. They couldn't help but remember that they had hit their child and warned her sternly. However, this child had always understood the big picture and helped them maintain their dignity. They felt a little guilty. "How old are you? Why are you still arguing with your daughter? I won't talk about your impatient temper. You should use your brain more in the future. Don't be the wind and rain when others say that you are the rain." Duchess Ding tapped the Sun clan's forehead. When Qin Huaining heard this, her face instantly turned as pale as paper. She lowered her head and secretly observed Duchess Ding's expression. The members of the Sun clan shrank their necks and stuck out their tongues with a smile on their faces. This made the girls laugh, and the noise and laughter spread far away. Qin Huaining was extremely nervous. She knew that her grandmother wasn't a simple person. She wasn't as easy to manipulate as the members of the Sun clan. Her words just now clearly had a hidden meaning. Ever since they arrived at Duke Ding's mansion, That wild hussy had always been the focus of everyone's attention. Even her grandmother could only see her. It was as if she had become transparent. Qin Huaining was already jealous and resentful of being treated so poorly. But now, those resentful feelings were extinguished by Duchess Ding's words. All that was left was the panic of losing favor. She hurriedly bowed to Duchess Ding and said with a smile, "Grandmother, you look better these days." Duchess Ding held Qin Yining's hand, gently patted the back of her hand, and said with a smile, "Yes, I'm living a comfortable life. Your two aunts and cousins are filial to me. Now, I don't care about this family anymore. If there is anything wrong, your aunt will take it on herself. She won't mention a word of groundless accusations in front of me. I have nothing to do, and I just want to enjoy my grandchildren. Tell me, how can I not look well?" Qin Huaining's head buzzed, and her face alternated between red and white. She forced a smile and said, "Grandmother is a Dai Fu person. My aunts and cousins are filial, and my uncles and cousins are also hardworking." "Yes." Duchess Ding looked at Qin Yining with a smile and said, "Our sister has suffered a lot in the past. Now that she has returned home, the calamity has passed. There will be good days in the future, so Sister E is also blessed." Everyone laughed in agreement, and they began to chat at once. Qin Huaining angrily retreated to the side and stood still. Her hands hidden in her sleeves were clenched into fists, and her palms were almost bleeding from her long nails. She didn't expect that Duchess Ding would embarrass her like this. Duchess Ding's words had repeatedly knocked her down. She didn't know if others could understand, but the Sun Clan probably could. Qin Huaining looked at the Sun Clan uneasily, only to see that the Sun Clan was looking in the direction of Duchess Ding and Qin Yining with a smile. She didn't know what they had heard, but they were laughing happily. Perhaps feeling her gaze, the Sun Clan turned their heads inquiringly. The two of them looked at each other, and the resentment in Qin Huaining's eyes that she couldn't hide in time fell into the Sun Clan's eyes. The Sun Clan was stunned. Thinking about what Duchess Ding had said just now, and then thinking about how Qin Huaining didn't forget to play tricks in front of her cousins today, she didn't like it in her heart, so she didn't call her to her side to comfort her as usual and continued to talk to her two sisters. She actually ignored her. Qin Huaining gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke. Now she could see who was close and who was distant. These people's hearts were too crooked. It was true that she had been swapped, and she had occupied the position of Qin Yining's legitimate daughter for 14 years, but how could they blame her for this? She was also a victim, but now they were giving her a hard time. They treated her like this, so how could they blame her for fighting for it? "Old madam." The head maidservant came in to salute and said with a smile, "Duke and eldest son have returned from court, and Steward Wang from the palace came with them. He said that there was an imperial edict. He told our whole family to go to the front to receive the edict." "Did Steward Wang, the emperor's personal attendant, come in person?" Duchess Ding's voice was a little high in the silence. The head maidservant nodded. "Yes, this servant asked the servant who followed us. He said that Duke and eldest son were very happy. Steward Wang was also very polite. He just told the young men not to come to Chuanxi Hall first, and to go to the front to see Steward Wang first to prepare to receive the edict." Second aunt clapped her hands. "I was wondering why those children hadn't come yet. It turned out that there was a good thing. Mother, it's most likely a good thing for the old men." Duchess Ding and eldest aunt also guessed the same, and both of them had a happy expression on their faces. Duke Ding's whole family was the mainstay of fighting against Dezhou's invasion. Whether it was heir apparent Sun Haifan, second master Sun Haijing, who was now fighting against the enemy on the front line, or Sun Yu, who was an official in the court, the civil officials and military generals, they were all the sharp blades of the emperor's pro-war faction. Now that Steward Wang came in person, it must be to reward one of the men of Duke Ding's mansion. At this time, they didn't have time to talk. Duchess Ding, eldest aunt, second aunt, and the Sun Clan all hurriedly went to put on makeup. The girls also straightened their clothes, and then quickly went to the front yard to burn incense and receive the edict. It was the first time that Qin Yining had seen such a scene, so she was inevitably a little nervous. She knelt at the back of the womenfolk with her cousins, listening to Steward Wang's slightly shrill voice read the imperial edict. "By the will of heaven, the emperor decrees that Sun Yu, the descendant of Duke Ding of Hanlin Academy, is an upright person with both talent and integrity. He has self-restraint and high integrity. He doesn't wallow in the mire. His loyalty can be seen and deeply comforts my heart. He will be promoted to Hanlon Academy's lecturer and be rewarded with 100 taels of gold. Thank you, Your Majesty. Everyone kowtowed in unison. Steward Wang handed over the imperial edict with both hands and said with a smile, Lord Sun, congratulations. Sun Yu took the imperial edict with both hands and hurriedly said with a smile, Thank you, Steward Wang. Please have tea in the flower hall. Duke Ding stood up and said with a smile, Thank you for coming, Steward Wang. You must taste my good tea before you go back. Steward Wang smiled until his eyes curved into crescents. He bowed and said, Thank you, Duke. It would be impolite of me to refuse. Please. Duke Ding and Sun Yu went to entertain Steward Wang together. The womenfolk and the rest of the young masters returned to Chuanxi Hall together. After they changed clothes and washed up, they sat down again. The atmosphere became lively again. Oh, it's really a great thing, a great blessing. Sun Yu took eldest aunt's hands and said, It's hard for my sister-in-law to raise such a good son. He has entered the pavilion at such a young age and has been promoted to Hanlon Academy's lecturer with his talent. He can even be rewarded by the emperor. Our family is the first to have such an honor. Eldest uncle smiled and waved his hand. Look at what you're saying. Brother Ming is just lucky. And this time, he really poked the emperor's itch. With that said, everyone was curious. Duchess Ding asked, I'm also wondering why the emperor specially ordered Steward Wang to announce the imperial edict and reward him. Not only did he promote him, but he also rewarded him with 100 taels of gold. Chapter 29. Eldest aunt sighed softly. This isn't a secret. I didn't tell Mother before because I was afraid that Mother would be anxious if she heard it. Before, someone from Dezhou contacted Brother Ming and asked him to join Dezhou. During this time, he said all kinds of bad things about our emperor. He also said that little Wang Yi from Dezhou was brave and that sooner or later, the iron hooves of the tiger army led by him would trample our Dian's mountains and rivers. When the female family members heard this, they all gasped. Duchess Ding frowned. Second aunt also covered her mouth and exclaimed. The Sun clan was the most erect. She grabbed eldest aunt's hand and said, Eldest sister-in-law, the people of Dian are not good. If this spread to His Majesty's ears, wouldn't we be giving them a handle? What if they put the hat of treason on us? Didn't it spread to His Majesty's ears? Brother Ming sternly refused the lobbyist on the spot. He even took off his official uniform and went to His Majesty to ask for punishment. You also know that His Majesty is suspicious, but in the end, he passed this hurdle without any mishap. Qin Yining didn't know much about the higher-ups in the capital, but he knew all kinds of rumors about the emperor. Among the people, there were many who scolded the emperor. Old and dim-sighted, muddle-headed and incompetent. He favored the demon empress and let the treacherous officials take power. In particular, the emperor favored his father-in-law, Grand Preceptor Chao, and condoned the infighting among the princes. As a result, half of the Dian imperial court was in the hands of Grand Preceptor Chao. The princes withered, and now only the crown prince was left. There was no choice when it came to inheriting the throne. Eldest aunt sighed again and said faintly, Brother Ming has offended the people of the great Zhou dynasty and has been the first to stick his neck out for so many years. I'm really worried. Although he has a gentle temperament, when he's stubborn, even 9 oxen can't pull him back. Forget it. It's all in the past. Fortunately, His Majesty believed Brother Ming. Duchess Ding patted her daughter-in-law's hand. Her eyes were gentle and kind, indicating that her children were here and that she should not say anything more. Only then did eldest aunt manage to recover from her worry. She smiled and said, It's about time. Mother, I'll go to the kitchen to take a look. The banquet will start soon. Let's set the banquet in the warm room, okay? Of course. Eldest aunt stood up and left. Second aunt then called over the 2 cousins who had followed her in just now and introduced them to each other. Sister E, this is your 5th cousin, and this is your 8th cousin. Your 2nd and 4th cousins have both joined the army and are not at home at the moment. Qin Yining hurriedly stood up and bowed to 5th cousin and 8th cousin. The men of the Sun family were very tall. Thick eyebrows and high noses were their characteristics. Fifth cousin and eighth cousin were in their early 20s, and the other was 17 or 18 years old. They were very polite to Qin Yining. Perhaps there was a big age gap, or perhaps there was a difference between men and women, but they did not talk much. They sat down again and chatted for a while. Qin Yining learned that the 5 cousins of the Sun family, except for eldest cousin Sun Yu, were all married. Now, eldest uncle and second uncle were guarding Xihua City, not far from the capital. Second cousin and fourth cousin were also in Xihua City with their families. They rarely came back in a long time. Fifth cousin's sister-in-law and eighth cousin's sister-in-law were pregnant. One was about to give birth, and the other was just pregnant. The fetus was unstable, so it was inconvenient for them to walk around. Therefore, they did not come out today. Since it's inconvenient for cousin's sister-in-law, there will be plenty of time in the future. I'm not afraid that there won't be a day to meet her. Qin Yining said with a smile, "Cousin, please send my regards." Fifth cousin and eighth cousin both nodded with a smile. "Come more often in the future. There will be many opportunities to meet." Seeing that the younger generation got along well with each other, Duchess Ding smiled very happily. While they were talking, a maidservant outside came in and said, "Old madam, the banquet has been set. Duke and eldest uncle have gone to the warm room. Madam, miss, and young master, please go to the warm room." "Let's go to the warm room." Duchess Ding stood up with a smile. The accompanying maidservants in the room served their masters to dress up. The group of people went to the warm room in a mighty manner, talking and laughing. The warm room was heated. As soon as they entered the room, they felt the heat on their faces, accompanied by the aroma of food, making them feel the warmth of home. There was an 8-section screen with black lacquer and green bamboo in the middle of the room, separating the 2 tables. The men were on the other side, and the women were sitting around a table. Since entering the warm room, Duchess Ding had been holding Qin Yining's hand. When they sat down, Qin Yining naturally sat next to Duchess Ding. The members of the Sun clan sat on the other side of his biological mother. Qin Yining pursed his red lips and sat next to the members of the Sun clan with his eyes lowered. Then, his cousins sat next to him. Eldest aunt and second aunt stood next to Duchess Ding. They all took the serving chopsticks and served the dishes. Duchess Ding laughed. "I don't want you to set the rules today. Sit down. Let's have a good meal as a family." Eldest aunt put a piece of sweet and sour fish without bones on the exquisite 5-blessing birthday plate in front of Duchess Ding and said with a smile, "Mother loves your daughter-in-law, so I can't be arrogant." Second aunt also said, "That's right. I'm used to serving mother. Mother, don't refuse." Qin Yining secretly looked at eldest aunt and second aunt's expressions and found that they were very sincere and happy. They didn't speak insincerely. Big families paid particular attention to the rule of not talking while eating. Only the sound of bowls and plates could be heard in the warm room, but Qin Yining felt that the atmosphere was light and cheerful. After everyone finished eating, the maidservants came in with sputum boxes, tea bowls, brass basins, and handkerchiefs to help their masters rinse their mouths and wash their hands. After everything was done, tea was served. After all, Qin Yining had just returned to the noble family, so she naturally became the focus of attention. The sisters secretly looked at her, and Duchess Ding observed Qin Yining's behavior all the time. She found that her sitting posture was dignified, her back was straight, and she was calm and composed. She had a kind of temperament and gentleness of a lady from a noble family. There was no mistake in her manners and etiquette. If no one talked about her past, it was impossible to tell that she had just returned home for a few days. Duchess Ding nodded secretly. This girl was willing to study so hard. On the one hand, she was smart. On the other hand, it was because she could judge the situation. After determining the situation, she had a strong ability to carry it out. With such a person by the Sun clan's side, she could at least say a few words when she saw something. Duchess Ding could also feel a little relieved that the Sun clan didn't have to be a gun for Qin Yining alone like in the past. "You can remove the screen. We are not outsiders. Sister, you should also meet your grandfather."
Yes.
The maidservants carried the screen away. Mother Bao walked to the door and glanced at the maidservants serving in the room. Everyone immediately understood and followed Mother Bao out of the warm room. They carefully closed the door and retreated to the gate of the courtyard to wait for orders. Only the family members were left in the room. Duke Ding and Duchess Ding got up and sat in the main seats again. The rest of the sisters stood aside according to their identities. Qin Yining knelt on the bright red carpet surrounded by flowers. Duke Ding bowed deeply and said, "Sister Yi pays her respects to grandfather. Get up." Duke Ding's voice was low and deep, like a large bell. It was obvious that Duke Ding was in good health. Qin Yining took the opportunity to look up and quickly sized him up. Duke Ding was nearly 70 years old. He was tall, had a ruddy face, and his eyes were bright. He was an extremely dignified and hale old man. Duke Ding asked Duchess Ding, who was beside him, "Don't you have a gift for Sister Yi?" "I was about to tell Sister Yi." Duchess Ding handed a bowl of warm tea to Duke Ding, and then pretended to be angry and said, "You're the only one who knows how to be a good person. You beat me to the words I wanted to say." Duke Ding laughed and almost spat out a mouthful of tea. "Look, how old are you? You're still distorting me like this." The girls and young men were used to seeing their grandparents like this, so they all laughed. Qin Yining also couldn't help laughing. Grandfather and grandmother had a good relationship. This family was also very kind. In contrast, the Prime Minister's mansion was much colder and more difficult to get along with. Duchess Ding waved at Qin Yining. Qin Yining obediently went to stand beside Duchess Ding. "Good boy. You've suffered so much outside over the years. Now the bitterness is over and the sweetness is coming." Duchess Ding patted the back of Qin Yining's hand lovingly and said, "Now I'll give you the Zhaoyun Agency. In the future, you'll be in charge of the operation and management. All the profits will belong to you. You don't have to give them to your mother or anyone else. I'll give you such a deal. First, I'll let you learn how to operate and practice. If you really need to manage the general affairs in the future, you won't be in the dark. Second, I'll give you some private money. There are still many places where you need money." Qin Yining had been obediently listening to her grandmother's words. Out of the corner of her eye, she looked at the expressions of the people around her. When she saw that everyone's expressions were slightly subtle, especially Qin Yining suddenly biting her lower lip, she knew that the Zhaoyun Agency must be a good thing. However, she didn't know what the Zhaoyun Agency was. She only knew that this industry would definitely make a lot of profit. It was a large amount of profit. She couldn't believe that it was given to her for free. Instinctively, she had doubts in her heart. Qin Yining looked at Duchess Ding uneasily and said, "Grandmother, how can I manage these things?" "What girl? Naturally, there will be someone for you to order. I'll give you the original Master Zhong's document of seeking refuge later. He's a suitable person. Don't worry." Did it mean that Qin Yining was just in name? She could just sit there and enjoy the dividends in the future? She became even more uneasy. Qin Yining never thought that there was a free lunch in the world. But she also knew that her grandmother would never harm her. Hearing this, the Sun clan finally couldn't sit still and said, "Mother, how can a little girl like her know how to operate? The Zhaoyun Agency is such a big industry. She may not understand it. Losing money is a small matter. If she offends someone, won't it make trouble for the family? Besides, I remember that the Zhaoyun Agency used to be the industry under the name of Brother Ming, right? How can it be given to Sister Yi now?" Qin Yining raised her eyes in surprise and met Sun Yu's gentle gaze. Chapter 30. When Qin Yining heard this, she couldn't help but look at Duchess Ding. She didn't know what kind of place Zhaoyun Agency was, but in order to give her Zhaoyun Agency, her grandmother actually used good fields and shops to exchange with her eldest cousin. It was no wonder that when her grandmother mentioned it just now, her cousins looked a little different. The Sun clan was also a little surprised. She really couldn't imagine how a girl who had just returned home and wasn't familiar with her family could be so likable. She could even make her mother spend so much money. "Mother, we appreciate your kindness, but Zhaoyun Agency is really not suitable for a girl who doesn't know anything to run. As I said just now, there are so many officials and dignitaries in Zhaoyun Agency. If she really offends someone, it won't be a joke. Besides, she just came back and hasn't recognized all the characters yet. How can she be qualified to run any business? The Prime Minister's manor doesn't lack food or clothes for her. When she came home, her grandmother didn't give her any money or shops. Why should our family spend so much money? The first half of the sentence was reasonable, but the second half made Duchess Ding frown, and the people present were slightly embarrassed. Duke Ding didn't want to participate in these things, so he called his cousins out and left the warm room to the women. When they saw their father leave like this, the Sun clan realized that they might have said something that Duke Ding didn't like to hear. Since childhood, Duke Ding had this habit. Whenever his brothers and sisters made a mistake, Duke Ding would avoid them and leave the space for Duchess Ding to show off. As soon as the men left, Duchess Ding said in a deep voice, "What you just said was inappropriate." How did he learn these tricks to compare himself to others after leaving home for a few days? As a mother, don't you know the principle of teaching by example? Aren't you afraid that your daughter will learn from you how to compete with others and not be harmonious sisters? The Sun clan didn't accept it, so they lowered their heads and didn't say a word. Qin Yining's face turned red and white. Wasn't Duchess Ding indirectly scolding the locust tree? When eldest aunt and second aunt saw that Duchess Ding was angry, they hurriedly persuaded her, "Mother, don't be angry. Sister Han is just a child. She speaks without thinking." A child's temperament, outspoken? She was already in her 40s. You still don't know how to make progress. Duchess Ding rubbed her forehead and scolded, "Have you forgotten what I told you that day?" Seeing that their mother was really angry, the members of the Sun clan felt wronged, but they didn't dare to talk back. They bowed their heads and admitted their mistakes. Duchess Ding took 2 deep breaths before saying, "You don't understand. Fortunately, you're lucky enough to have Sister Yi by your side, who can see things clearly. In the future, you should also be more careful. Don't believe everything that others say. If you encounter any major matters in Qin's mansion, you can discuss them with Sister Yi. I also believe that Sister Yi will be able to manage the Zhaoyun agency. Even if you don't have the ability, does your daughter not have it? Don't forget whose daughter Sister Yi is." The members of the Sun clan were scolded like quails. They didn't dare to breathe loudly. Although they felt indignant, they felt an inexplicable sense of honor. Perhaps Qin Yining inherited her father's intelligence? Qin Yining saw that her grandmother was scolding her daughter and had no right to interrupt, so she could only feel anxious. Seeing that the topic had finally come to an end, she hurriedly went to persuade Duchess Ding with eldest aunt and second aunt. Duchess Ding's anger wasn't directed at others. In order to avoid embarrassment, she went along with it. "Sister Yi, you just came back. I don't think you know much about the Zhaoyun agency. I'll ask Mom about to tell you what kind of business Zhaoyun agency does. In addition, later, ask Mom about to send the shop's account books, documents, and other things to your home."
Yes.
Qin Yining obediently answered. Mama Bao smiled and curtsied. "Miss, please follow this servant." "Thank you, Mama Bao." Qin Yining avoided her salute and returned half a salute. The 2 of them politely left the warm room and walked out. Duchess Ding and her 2 aunts looked at their figures and smiled with satisfaction. Seeing that the members of the Sun clan were whispering something to Qin Yining, Duchess Ding felt a headache again. She couldn't help but start scolding her daughter again. "I think Sister Yi knows when to advance and when to retreat. This granddaughter of mine is the best. In the future, let's not talk about the Sun clan being scolded by Duchess Ding." Qin Yining followed Mama Bao to a quiet place in the yard to talk. "Miss, I think you don't know the origin of Zhaoyun agency, right?" "Yes. Can you tell me what kind of business it is?" Mama Bao said with a smile. "Zhaoyun agency is somewhat similar to the musical house of the previous dynasty, but it is different. Miss should know that some ministers who are convicted will implicate their families, right?" "Yes, I know." Qin Yining nodded. Mama Bao said, "Some ministers who were convicted were beheaded or exiled. The women in their families, whether they were 80-year-old mothers or 3-year-old beauties, were all treated as official prostitutes. Miss, please note that this prostitute is not the one in the word woman." "Yes. In the past, the imperial court ran its own musical house, so these official prostitutes were all sent to the musical house. It can be said that they each performed their own duties, depending on their ability. The older ones couldn't do the work on the table, so they were assigned to work in the kitchen, the woodshed, the cleaning, and the like. The younger girls were temporarily raised, and those of the same age were sent to the front of the musical house to entertain guests. Although this dynasty promotes etiquette, Those high officials and nobles who visit the musical house especially like to choose the families of their former colleagues to humiliate them. Most people don't pay cash, so it is common to buy on credit, so the musical house has been losing money. There's such a person. Qin Yining was dumbfounded. Mama Bao smiled. There are all kinds of people in this big world. This musical house was originally the business of the Emperor Emeritus. How could the Emperor Emeritus allow his business to always lose money? Therefore, in a fit of anger, he closed the musical house. Since he couldn't find anyone to get back the money he had invested, it was all for naught. There was no place to deal with those criminals, but he couldn't not raise them. Later, his subordinates came up with an idea, and we have the Zhao Yun agency now. The Emperor Emeritus reopened the musical house, but it doesn't do business with the outside world anymore. It only raises those criminals who were convicted by the big families. The Zhao Yun agency is in charge of the business on the surface, but all the employees of the industries under the Zhao Yun agency, except for a few shopkeepers, have to be rented from the musical house. Qin Yining understood immediately. He nodded and said, "This idea is really good. In this way, the Emperor Emeritus's musical house can raise these criminals and rent them out without losing money. The Zhao Yun agency also needs to hire people to run the business. If they hire these criminals, not only will they have labor, but it can also be considered a big business feature." Madame Jean is right. Mrs. Smart and understood it immediately. To be honest, this idea was given to the Emperor Emeritus by the old Duke Ding. The Emperor Emeritus was happy, so he gave the Zhao Yun agency to the old Duke Ding to run. It has been passed down to the present and is now in the hands of the old master. However, you know the old master's temperament. Speaking of this, Mama Bao sighed and said, "Originally, there were 2 restaurants, 2 inns, and 2 brothels under the Zhao Yun agency's management. But the old master is stubborn and can't stand those filthy things. He closed the 2 brothels as soon as he took over. So, the Zhao Yun agency that is now in Mrs. hands has 3 restaurants and 2 inns. The old master renovated the original brothel and opened a restaurant. The business is doing well. However, because of the war these years, the old master has no intention of running the business. Now, there is still a brothel that is idle." At this point, Qin Yining completely understood the origin of the Zhao Yun agency. It was no wonder that the Sun Clan had opposed it. Now, the Zhao Yun agency had 3 restaurants, 2 inns, and an immovable property. This was a large sum of money. Not to mention that property, just the restaurants and inns that were profitable now, how much money would they make every year? So all of this suddenly became her own money? Also, the Zhao Yun agency's renting of convicts from the Royal Musical House was a major feature. Then, everyone in the restaurants and inns were all convicts. These criminal women might have been the old madam of some big family in the past, or they might have been the most beautiful young lady in a city. Perhaps the one pouring tea in the inn was even the head of a family in the inner chamber. Although these people were punished by their families, but in Qin Yining's eyes, these odd-job workers had a big background. "Miss, is there anything you don't understand?" Mama Bao saw Qin Yining frowning and pondering and couldn't help but ask. Qin Yining shook her head with a smile and said, "As expected, grandmother gave me a generous gift. Although I am ashamed to accept it, I will certainly live up to grandfather and grandmother's painstaking efforts. I will manage it well and make good use of the connections." Mama Bao was shocked when she heard this. Her eyes flashed, and she nodded repeatedly and said, "Good. Miss is so smart. You really don't let down Madam's expectations." This old servant is relieved. The two went back and chatted for a while. Seeing that it was getting late, the Sun Clan took Qin Yining and Qin Huaining to leave. Mama Bao returned the conversation to Duchess Ding word for word. Duchess Ding asked, "Did she really say that?" "Yes. Miss Biao has a clever mind." She understood immediately. This old servant only told her the origin of the Zhao Yun agency. I didn't go into detail, but she already understood the important points. She is indeed the daughter of Wise Pan and Mama Bao praised. Duchess Ding also laughed when she heard this. "Old madam, the master is here." The maidservant outside lifted the warm curtain and saw Sun Yu walking in quickly. Duchess Ding bowed to him. "Grandmother, Brother Ming, come and sit down. It's warm." Sun Yu moved his chair, and sat down next to Duchess Ding. He asked straightforwardly, "Grandmother, I just heard that something happened to Zhao Yun Agency these 2 days. Did you already know about it?" Duchess Ding nodded with a smile. "Yes, I know." Chapter 31. There's nothing bad about it. Duchess Ding's eyes and eyebrows were full of smiles. "You don't know that girl, but I think she has the ability to handle it well." "Grandmother, you have so much confidence in her?" Sun Yu smiled playfully. Duchess Ding said, "I just think that this child is very good. She has suffered a lot in the outside world over the years. I think that a girl who has experienced the wind and rain and can survive strong will be able to withstand the destruction better than those delicate flowers born in a greenhouse. In addition, she is smart and has a good mind. Her nature is very pure. I think this matter can be regarded as a good karma between us and her. On the other hand, it can be regarded as a test so that I can understand her thoroughly." "Grandmother, you praise her like a flower. Forget it. In fact, it's nothing. Although it's a big matter, my cousin is just a girl in the boudoir. It doesn't involve anything else. At worst, she will lose a shopkeeper. It won't hurt her." "Yes, I think so too." Duchess Ding looked solemn and said, "If she can't handle it well, she will lose a shopkeeper at most. She is the daughter of the Prime Minister. Even if those old antiques in Qinglu want to blame her, they can't blame her. After all, her father can take the blame. Besides, with your position in the court, this matter is too difficult to handle. Why don't you throw it aside and let a little girl deal with it, so that others won't say that you are afraid of the powerful?" "That's right." Sun Yu nodded and said with a sigh, "But the Tang family has ruined things. The people of Qinglu are all staring at me, but I just shrunk my neck and gave the property to others. In the end, it's not good to hear. Besides, Mother knows Uncle's character. I'm afraid that he will turn his back on us and use Cousin as a scapegoat. Even if nothing happens, Qin Ming has long been against those people in Qinglu. Besides, can the Tang family's matter be a small matter? What a big crime it is to murder the Empress. Not to mention that the Emperor only favors the Empress. Can Grand Preceptor Chao let the person who murdered his daughter get away with it? Even if he has the ability to get the person from King Ning, how can he avoid Grand Preceptor Chao?" Sun Yu's face turned cold. He said indignantly, "I know what grandmother said is reasonable. However, I don't think Qinglu did anything wrong. She could only blame the Demon Empress for having such a tough life. Imperial Physician Tang had sacrificed his entire family, but she was only half dead from the poison. His Majesty has become more and more muddle-headed these years, truly. Brother Ming, watch your words." Duchess Ding stopped Sun Yu's words and said in a deep voice, "There are some things that you should know in your heart. There's no need to say them out loud. If you're so careless outside, aren't you afraid of causing trouble? You're too stubborn. You need to learn how to deal with things tactfully in order to have a long term." Sun Yu hurriedly stood up and saluted. "Yes, grandson will follow grandmother's instructions." Duchess Ding saw that the atmosphere was too depressing, so she brought the topic back to family matters. Inside the carriage, Qin Huaining was looking pitifully at the Sun Clan. The lipstick on her lips had been wiped off. Coupled with her plain dress and pitiful expression with tears in her eyes, she looked like a little animal that had been bullied. Her soft eyes kept looking at the Sun Clan, which finally made the Sun Clan sigh. "Sister Hui, you can't do this again in the future. In front of your maternal grandfather's family, you should at least consider the dignity of our family. You know that your maternal grandfather's family doesn't like our Prime Minister's mansion, and they do things differently. Why do you have to call Sister Yi Xiaoxi in front of your sister? Sister Yi has been back for so many days. Why can't you remember her name?" The tears in Qin Huaining's eyes fell down like broken beads. "I just called her daughter out of habit. The first time I called her Xiaoxi, so I got used to it. It wasn't intentional." Qin Yining, who was at the side, looked down and pretended not to hear anything. The Sun Clan glanced at Qin Yining and saw Qin Huaining crying like a pear blossom in the rain. They thought that this child had a hard life. She had been swapped since she was a baby. What did a little baby know? It wasn't her fault at all. It was understandable that she would be frightened and uneasy. Thinking of this, the Sun Clan's heart softened. She took a handkerchief and wiped Qin Huaining's tears. Why are you crying? You look like a cat. How are you going to face people later? Those who don't know will think that the Duke Dingwa's mansion is bullying you. Qin Huaining hurriedly wiped her tears and anxiously said, I won't cry. I didn't mean it that way. I know. You should pay more attention to what you say in the future. A normal joke can offend everyone. What you said just now, I don't know what our sisters will think. The people of the Duke Dingwa's mansion are kind and honest. They definitely won't think too much. Qin Huaining blew her nose and smiled innocently at the Sun Clan. The Sun Clan choked. They didn't know how to respond. Hearing this, Qin Yining finally opened her eyes. She looked at Qin Huaining with a faint smile and said, Miss Huaining, don't confuse the definition. When you say something wrong, others don't care. That's because they are magnanimous. If you can say something like that, it means that you have a bad character. How can you confuse the two? Mother is lecturing you about your character. Do you think that because the people of the Duke Dingwa's mansion don't care about it, you are justified? Qin Huaining's tears gushed out again as if a gate had been opened. She sobbed and said, Xiaoxi, Yining is right. I didn't do it on purpose. Not doing it on purpose is more terrible than doing it on purpose. If you did it on purpose, at least it means that you still have some basic sense of right and wrong. At least you know in your heart that what you did was wrong. You just couldn't help but do it out of jealousy. But if you didn't do it on purpose, it means that you don't even have a sense of right and wrong. You don't know what you did was wrong. You can still put on an innocent face after harming others. That's more hateful than doing it on purpose. Qin Yining was like a cannon as he looked at Qin Huaining with bright eyes. Qin Huaining was speechless. She could only cover her face and cry. She couldn't not cover her face. Because she had been beaten up by Qin Yining, Qin Huaining would feel cold all over as soon as he met her eyes. He felt that her fist would fall on him at any time. Moreover, she couldn't find any words to refute Qin Yining's fallacious reasoning. The Sun Clan on the side looked thoughtful when they heard this. Qin Yining's words just now were like a large bell that struck her heart. She was a bit impulsive, but she didn't think that she was stupid. It was just that sometimes she would let her emotions affect her decisions and be easily coaxed by a few words. Sometimes she would be blinded. Her mother said that Qin Yining could see things clearly. She didn't think much of it at first, but now that she heard a few words from Qin Yining, she had to admit that her mother's judgment of people was never wrong. However, was the nature of the girl she raised actually like this? The Sun Clan couldn't accept it. In her heart, Qin Huaining had always been dignified and gentle. She was modest and sensible towards her sisters. However, ever since Qin Yining came back, she seemed to have changed into a different person. She became like a needle hidden in silk floss. As a mother, although she could understand the source of Qin Huaining's uneasiness, today in the Duke Dingwa's mansion, Duchess Ding's wife's words had already shown that even if she was not in front of her, she could see that there was something wrong with Qin Huaining's character. Now, in the carriage, Qin Yining was even more open about the matter. The Sun Clan felt that their minds were a bit messy. Qin Yining didn't want to see Qin Huaining silently shed tears as if she was being bullied. Therefore, she lowered her eyes to observe the patterns on the corners of her skirt again and continued to look down. The carriage sank into silence for a moment. It was so quiet that Qin Huaining was surprised to find that her sobbing had become the only sound in the carriage. She felt a burst of embarrassment and couldn't help but fall silent. After falling silent, Qin Huaining looked at the Sun Clan, who was still in a daze, and then looked at Qin Yining, who lowered her eyes and didn't say anything. She felt that she had lost too much face. Just as she opened her mouth to say something, the older female servant outside the carriage said loudly, Madam, young miss, we've arrived. Qin Huaining felt stifled in her heart. She angrily bit her lower lip. It wasn't until she got off the carriage that she managed to control her emotions. She didn't let herself appear too ugly. When the group returned to the Fu, they naturally had to go to C.I. Shao Garden to pay their respects to Old Madam. Old Madam was just about to set the table for dinner. The Sun Clan hurriedly took off their cloaks and served the dishes with Second Madam and Third Madam. Qin Huaining and Qin Yining stood at the side with their heads lowered. Old Madam was eating and sizing up the two's expressions. She couldn't help but frown when she saw Qin Huaining's red eyes. What's wrong with Sister Hui? Why are you crying? Did someone bully you? Old Madam put down her chopsticks and waved at Qin Huaining. With the scene in the carriage just now, Qin Huaining didn't dare to sow discord in front of her. She only shook her head. No. What is grandmother saying? How could anyone bully their granddaughter? It's just that the wind and sand got into my eyes. The wind and sand got into your eyes? How come I don't see anyone else getting into it? If you have any grievances, just say it. Grandmother will support you. At the side, Second Madam and Third Madam looked at each other with some interest. With Old Madam's words, they didn't know what kind of grievances this girl had suffered in Duke Ding's Fu. The Sun Clan looked at the scene in front of them. Old Madam's reaction just happened to confirm what Qin Yining had said in the carriage just now. She became more and more annoyed in her heart. In front of her in-laws, how could the Sun Clan let her maternal family lose face like this? Mother, don't misunderstand. The Sun Clan came forward with a smile and said, Sister Hui made a mistake, but her maternal grandmother's family didn't say anything. It was I who taught her a few words in the carriage. It's not a big deal, so how could it disturb you? Qin Huaining gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke, but she didn't dare to anger the Sun Clan. She couldn't lose the Sun Clan's support, so she quickly took the lead. Yes, I did something wrong. The Sun Clan continued. Today, when we went to Duke Ding's Fu, Sister Yi's maternal grandmother gave her a big gift and gave her the entire Zhao Yun agency to manage. Speaking of this, the Sun Clan proudly straightened her back. Her voice became lighter as she joked. In the future, our family's sister Yi will also be a millionaire. This sentence made everyone's attention shift to Qin Yining. Old Madam said in surprise, In-law, you're so generous. Second Madam and Third Madam also smiled and complimented. It's rare for Duchess Ding to care so much about our sister Yi. Chapter 32. Duchess Ding gave Qin Yining such a big industry, which gave her enough face and also gave face to the Sun Clan. The Sun Clan immediately felt honored in front of her in-law's family. She couldn't hide her pride and complacency as she said, I originally didn't want it, but her grandmother insisted on giving it to her. She said that this child caught her eye and couldn't be stopped. This industry was originally her cousin Yuan Ming's industry. In order to give it to her, her grandmother specially exchanged good fields and shops with her cousin. I said that she, a maidservant, didn't know how to run a business, but I was reprimanded. She said that I was too protective of the child and refused to give her a chance to practice. It was really difficult. When the Sun Clan said this, she shook her head and felt very helpless. These words were embellished and slapped Old Madam's face with banknotes. The Sun Clan thought in her heart, You, as a grandmother, didn't give any money to the child when he came back. You also arranged the farthest courtyard for him. If he wants to save for himself, he needs my maternal family to do it. It seems that everything in our Duke Dingfu is inlaid with gold. Your Prime Minister's manor is a miser. Obviously, when the Sun Clan thought like this, they had forgotten that she and Old Madam had the same idea a few days ago. They didn't want Qin Yining to live in the manor and almost sent him to the fields. How could Old Madam, Second Madam, and Third Madam not understand the Sun Clan's complacency? However, the facts were in front of them. The people of Duke Dingfu were indeed blinding their eyes with shining silver. If they really wanted to fight for this, they would have to give Qin Yining an industry similar to Zhao Yun Agency. Not to mention that the Prime Minister's manor's current industry was nothing more than some good fields, forests, shops, and fields. Even the businesses they operated were some ink and brush shops, silk and satin estates. Although they were profitable, they weren't as good as Zhao Yun Agency. Moreover, even if there was such a good industry, Old Madam wouldn't be willing to give it to a girl as a dowry. In the end, the foundation of the Prime Minister's manor wasn't as good as the Duke Dingfu that had been passed down for generations. Duchess Ding could throw money at people, but they couldn't. Old Madam wisely chose to play dumb at this moment. Second Madam and Third Madam were naturally unwilling to allow their mother-in-law to give the property to the eldest son's daughter. After all, the Prime Minister's estate had not been separated yet. The eldest son's wife did not have a son, but the second and third branches had plenty of sons. The two sisters-in-law complimented Duchess Ding's generosity tacitly and praised Qin Yining for being sensible and likable for being favored by Duchess Ding. They also did not forget to praise Qin Yining for inheriting his father's intelligence, which made the members of the Sun Clan blush and smile from ear to ear. Qin Yining looked at the Sun Clan's childish behavior and could not help but sigh. She suddenly understood why Duchess Ding couldn't hold back her anger today and reprimanded the Sun Clan in front of everyone. If she had a daughter who was in her 40s but still acted like a 14-year-old, blindly following her heart and not considering the opinions of others, she would also be annoyed. However, Qin Yining felt that she was now like an isolated person. Everyone only circled around Qin Yining and took away everything she originally had. She had lived in the family Qin for 14 years. Although she was loved by old Madam and her mother, she had never seen anyone praise her to the heavens like this. In the past, when she was still treated as their biological daughter, no one had ever praised her for being like her father or having the style of her father. Looking at the faces of second aunt and third aunt, Qin Yining felt extremely sick of it. Wasn't it because Qin Yining had a Zhao Yunci, but she didn't have one before? Since she was a child, her grandmother didn't like her very much. However, no matter how much she disliked her, she had still lived with her grandmother for 14 years. Could it be that her 14 years couldn't compare to Qin Yining's meeting with Duchess Ding? Qin Yining gnashed her teeth. If it weren't for the fact that she still had some rationality left, she would have already cursed. However, she knew that her good days were tied to these people in front of her. She couldn't let them have a bad impression of her. Otherwise, there would be more blame in the future. Old Madam. Right at this moment, Mammy Qin smiled and opened the warm curtain in front of the door. She replied, "Eldest master has returned." As soon as her voice fell, Qin Huayuan entered the door wearing a cotton-padded cloak with a gray mouse fur collar. She casually handed the cloak to Mammy Qin and came forward to greet Old Madam. "Mother, you're back. Quickly sit down." Old Madam had a smile on her face. Qin Huayuan sat down on a round chair with a thick cushion. The Sun Clan, second Madam, and third Madam naturally retreated to the side. Seeing that the room was filled with a joyous atmosphere, Qin Huayuan asked with a smile, "What good thing happened that I don't know about?" "Mother, please tell me about it." Old Madam smiled and said, "Isn't it Sister Yi's good news? Today, she went back to Duke Dinghua's estate. In order to celebrate her return, her grandmother gave her the Zhaoyun agency. We were just talking about it." When Qin Huayuan heard this, he was stunned. In a breath, he had already grasped the crux of the matter. He couldn't help but sigh softly and look at Qin Yining. As a father, he naturally liked children who were similar to him. Qin Huayuan was no exception. However, it was a pity that no matter how hard he worked over the years and how many prescriptions he secretly used, he still couldn't make his wife give birth to a son. She was just a girl. Even if she looked like him, what was the use? It could only be a marriage alliance. When he looked at Qin Yining's delicate appearance, Qin Huayuan felt even more regretful. There was a voice in his heart that screamed, "Why isn't this a son?" There were some words that he couldn't be bothered to say. She was just a little girl. No matter how big the Tang family's matter was, what could she do? Getting the Zhaoyun agency was just a bonus. This time, the Tang family's matter involved Prince Ning and Qinglu. If they couldn't handle it after the matter, at most the head shopkeeper would take the blame. The Zhaoyun agency had already changed owners. It was natural to change the head shopkeeper. When Qin Huayuan thought about this, he didn't say much. He only said, "Father-in-law and mother-in-law have troubled themselves. I will definitely come to thank you another day." When the Sun Clan heard this, their hearts were indescribably warm. When they looked at Qin Huayuan, their gazes softened. When the old madam saw that the Sun Clan, Qin Yining, and Qin Huaining were still dressed for going out, she told them to go back and rest. There was no need for them to come over today. The three of them bowed. Qin Huaining forced a smile and said goodbye to the Sun Clan. He returned to the warm room to rest for the time being. On the other hand, Qin Yining, Ruelan, Nurse Jean, and Kaiju followed the small sedan chair to send the Sun Clan back to Xingning Garden. After bowing, they returned to their own snow pear courtyard. In such a short time, the news that Qin Yining had become the owner of the Zhaoyun agency had spread like wildfire. Along the way, all the servants they met took the initiative to come forward and greet them politely. Ruelon carried a lamp and followed Qin Yining. She carefully recalled what had happened after Qin Yining returned to the Fu. 5 days ago, when the young lady had just returned to the Fu, the old madam and her birth mother didn't recognize her. Qin Huaining bullied her. She even had to look at the servants' faces for food and necessities. But now? The old madam didn't hate her. Foreigners seemed to like her. There was no need to mention how Duke Ding's Fu treated her. She didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Her display of power not only shocked the servants, but also shocked the master, Qin Huaining. Ruelon, who was in the carriage, heard clearly what he said when he lectured her. The most important thing was that all the young ladies in the Fu were still living on 2 taels a month, but her young lady already had a mountain of gold. Thinking of this, Ruelon was so excited that her blood was boiling. She was even more determined to follow Qin Yining in the future. In the past, she was a frog at the bottom of the well. She only knew that Xingning Garden was so small. She thought that the best future was to be the master. Now that she followed the young lady, although the future was unknown, it was obviously more promising than following foreign. Of course, Qin Yining didn't know what Ruelon was thinking. She just felt that everyone was suddenly more polite to her and Ruelon was more attentive to her service. She couldn't help but find it funny. Was it human nature to step on those who were higher up? Turning into the alley, she saw a figure standing at the door of Snow Pear Courtyard in the distance, craning her neck to look outside. Seeing them, the person hurried to greet them. When she got closer, Qin Yining saw that it was Qiu Lu who ran over. "Young lady." Qiu Lu deliberately lowered her voice and said nervously, "Just now, a Master Zhong came with 2 big camphorwood boxes. He said that he was here to deliver the account books of Zhaoyun Agency to you. But after he came, he refused to drink tea or leave. He even knelt in the yard and refused to leave." Qin Yining blinked in surprise, and then asked in a slightly anxious voice, "How long has he been here? How many people knew when he came? Did anyone know that he was kneeling?" When he came in through the back door. Not many people knew. When others saw him come in with the boxes, they thought he was delivering things to you and didn't pay attention to when he left. As for kneeling, Qiu Lu thought for a while and said, "It's been more than 2 hours. I was afraid it would be bad if it spread. So I discussed with Zhu Mama and Zhan Mama to discipline all the servants in Snow Pear Courtyard. They are not allowed to leave the courtyard. Today, Zhu Mama and I were the ones who carried the boxes." Qin Yining breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. "You did well." She knew that Qiu Lu thought things through, but she had a slow personality. She didn't expect her to be so steady in such an emergency. It seemed that Qiu Lu could be used in the future. The master and servants returned to Snow Pear Courtyard. As expected, they saw a person kneeling at the end of the pebbled path in the courtyard. Winter was about to begin, and it was evening. The cold wind blew, causing the lanterns in the corridor to flicker and flicker. The wind blew yellow bamboo leaves all over the ground. The figure kneeling upright looked extremely desolate. Qiu Lu saw that Qin Yining stopped and looked at her questioningly. Qin Yining thought for a while and said, "This is Master Zhong, right? You want to hand over the account books to me? Please come in and talk." He didn't even look at Innkeeper Zhong as he said this. Instead, he went straight into the reception hall. Ruelon and Qiu Lu hurried to invite Shopkeeper Zhong. "Shopkeeper, our young lady is back. Please get up. If you go on like this, it will be difficult for our young lady." Chapter 33. Qin Yining sat at the head of the table. Ruelon and Qiu Lu stood to her left and right. She was silent and didn't immediately respond. Instead, she carefully examined Shopkeeper Zhong. Zhong Yuqing was close to 60 years old. He was of medium height and was slightly plump. He wore a sapphire blue brocade gown with a pattern of fortune and a dark brown cotton cloak. He wore a warm hat on his head. In the middle of the hat was a sapphire the size of a fingernail. Just by looking at his attire, she could tell that he was a very respectable person. But right now, his face was miserable. His wrinkles were filled with the word worry. His white goatee trembled. When he saluted Qin Yining, he bowed very low as if he couldn't bear the weight. Qin Yining quickly calculated in her mind. A shopkeeper like Shopkeeper Zhong was much more respectable than any shopkeeper she had seen when she was selling herbs outside. In the past, She should be the one nodding and bowing to others. But now, this shopkeeper was kneeling in front of her. She couldn't find a way to deal with it for a while. However, she was the new owner of Zhao Yun Agency. Although she could rely on the head shopkeeper for business matters, she still had to make some decisions. How to convince the public in the future all depended on today. Qin Yining thought of this. Her back straightened, and her aura became stronger. Silence had always been the most profound response. Shopkeeper Zhong saw that the new owner was a young girl but could keep her composure. Thinking of the powerful Duchess Ding, he didn't dare to slight her and lowered his head even more. Ruelan and Xiao Lu couldn't help but admire their young lady. No other young lady had such grace and aura. The silence lasted for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Then Qin Yining slowly spoke. Because she had to think, she spoke very slowly. But when she spoke, each word seemed to carry more weight. Master Zhong, did you come specially today for something important? Please stand up and respond. Ruelan, take a seat. Xiao Lu, bring good tea. Ruelan and Xiao Lu did as they were told. Shopkeeper Zhong stood up, bowed, and stepped back. He only sat down on one side of the table that Ruelan brought over. Then, he took over the white porcelain red plum tea bowl that Xiao Lu brought over with both hands and put it on the short table beside him. Qin Yining played with the lid of the teacup in his hand and said, "There are no outsiders here. If Shopkeeper Zhong has something to say, please speak your mind. However, if you have any problems in the future, feel free to come and tell me directly. But if you continue to kneel like this in the middle of winter and don't get up, what will you do if you hurt your body? I still have to rely on you for my future business." Shopkeeper Zhong was a smart man. Hearing this, he immediately understood that Qin Yining was blaming him for possibly ruining the girl's reputation. He hurriedly got up and bowed. "Boss is right. This lowly one was reckless this time. I won't do it again in the future. It's just that today's matter is urgent, so I came here rashly." While speaking, he quickly looked up at Qin Yining. He saw that the girl sitting at the head of the table was wearing a gorilla red cloak. Under the light, her face was so beautiful that it was hard to describe. A pair of slender, long eyebrows outlined a bit of heroism, which made her eyes bright and deep. She could be called an unfathomable figure. Shopkeeper Zhong was shocked and hurriedly said, "Boss, something happened to the Zhao Yun Agency. I can't deal with it, so I come to ask for your advice." Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. Although he had a hunch that even if he got the Zhao Yun Agency, he would not get the bonus for free. However, when it happened, he still felt unprepared. Qin Yining was flustered, but he looked calm. He just raised his chin and motioned for Shopkeeper Zhong to continue. Shopkeeper Zhong said, "A few days ago, we rented a girl from the musical house. She was 14 years old and looked like a flower bud. Who would have thought that just one day after she arrived at the restaurant, Prince Ning broke in and snatched her away without saying a word? It's not that I don't have any bodyguard boxing masters. Our Zhao Yun Agency will not be bullied for no reason. But Prince Ning is powerful, so I really don't dare to offend him. Now this girl has been in Prince Ning's mansion for 3 days. The rented person was lost. I really can't explain it to the steward of the musical house, so I come to ask you to help me." There was a moment of silence in the room. It was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Ruelan and Xiao Lu were listening on the side. In an instant, they were so scared that cold sweat came out. Who didn't know who Prince Ning was in the Dian? Prince Ning, Yuqi Jinming, advocated force. He was good at leading troops in war. As the emperor's brother, he was favored by the emperor. The emperor had few children, and he once adopted Prince Ning's son as a prince. Although the emperor later had a prince, he gave the prince back to Prince Ning. After all, the status of Prince Ning's mansion was not ordinary. However, no matter how good Prince Ning was, he was a licentious and tyrannical person. If he liked a girl or a young wife, he would directly take her away. How could a girl in the boudoir like Qin Yining deal with this kind of thing? Just when Ruelan and Xiao Lu were complaining about the injustice and sweating for their master, they heard a clear laughter. Qin Yining said with a smile, "Shopkeeper Zhong is a wonderful person. This is the first time I've seen you beg someone like this. Since you don't want to tell the truth, please do as you please." As she spoke, she picked up a cup of tea. "Serve tea to see the guest out?" The maidservants were stunned. It was Ruelon who reacted first and asked shopkeeper Zhong to leave. Shopkeeper Zhong was stunned and looked at the girl in the first seat in astonishment. He saw Qin Yining was calm and graceful, with a gentle smile, as if he wouldn't be shaken even if the wind and rain fell on him. Shopkeeper Zhong immediately put away his disdain and didn't dare to belittle her as a little girl. He knelt down with a thud. "Boss, please don't be angry," Qin Yining said. "Shopkeeper Zhong, since you're here to beg me, don't try to deceive me. You rented people from the musical house. I don't believe that you haven't lost your face like this before. How did you deal with it at that time? Now, since you can't deal with it well, it must be unusual. You'd better tell me the truth. I'll listen to it, and maybe I can help you think of a way." Shopkeeper Zhong knelt on the ground and kowtowed. "Boss, you're wise. The girl who was taken away by Prince Ning was surnamed Tang, and her name was Ming. She was the only daughter of the former Imperial Hospital's Chief Tang. Imperial Hospital's Chief Tang was sentenced to be executed because he poisoned the Empress. The women of the Tang family didn't want to be humiliated, so they all killed themselves. This Miss Tang escaped because she became a nun half a year ago. Later, when the incident happened, she was taken to the musical house and then rented back." Qin Yining understood the latter part of shopkeeper Zhong's words even if he didn't say it. She was born among the common people, so she knew more than the nobles in the capital city. The emperor was muddle-headed and incompetent. He was almost 70 years old, but he only favored the Empress Chao, who was in her early 20s. Chao was born in a famous family. Her father was the crown prince's imperial preceptor, Chao Bingzhong. Imperial preceptor Chao's daughter was the empress, and his disciple was the crown prince. He was in the limelight in the imperial court, so he acted even more arrogantly. As for the Empress Chao, it was said that she was devastatingly beautiful and seductive. Not only was she doted on, but she also frequently interfered with the imperial court. She was no different from Daji, Baosi, Fian, and Hada in history. The common people didn't call Chao the Empress, but the Demon Empress. Everyone said that the reason the emperor was so muddle-headed was because of the Demon Empress. Qin Yining also heard about the Tang family on his way back to the capital city. It was said that a certain imperial physician was on good terms with the civil officials in the capital city. He hoped to clean up the emperor and eliminate the Demon Empress. In the Dian dynasty, he used his position to poison the Demon Empress. He didn't expect the Demon Empress to be so tough. She was only half dead from the poison, but the entire family of the imperial physician lost their lives. After hearing shopkeeper Zhong's words, Qin Yining understood the origin of this Miss Tang Ming. Today, shopkeeper Zhong came as if his ass was on fire. Qin Yining was confused at first, but now she understood why he was so humble. Tang Ming's father was the hero who killed the Demon Empress with poison. Tang Ming was the hero's orphan. She was brought back by the Zhao Yun Bureau, but they didn't protect her well. She was taken away by the perverted Ning Wang for 3 days. Everyone could guess what would happen in these 3 days. Presumably, the old antiques in the capital city must have tortured shopkeeper Zhong a lot in these 3 days. Those officials couldn't deal with Imperial Tutor Chao and Ning Wang, but they were more than enough to deal with a small shopkeeper. Shopkeeper Zhong also had a son and nephew. If this matter wasn't handled well, shopkeeper Zhong's family wouldn't have a foothold in the capital city. They might even lose their lives. No wonder shopkeeper Zhong is so anxious. Qin Yining frowned and said, "I understand what you said. You can go back." He didn't say anything. Shopkeeper Zhong said anxiously, "Boss, please show this lowly one the way. This lowly one's family will definitely be deeply grateful. We will be loyal to boss for the rest of our lives." "Shopkeeper Zhong," Qin Yining said calmly, "what do you think I can do?" This sentence was like a bucket of cold water poured over his head. Yes, the original boss was a great talent like Sun Yu, but he didn't take on this hot potato. Now the boss was just a girl in the boudoir. What could she do? He was really turning to any doctor in his desperation. Shopkeeper Zhong hung his head in despair. He could already foresee the future of his family. Maybe he would lose his life in a few days. Qin Yining brought the tea again. This time, shopkeeper Zhong bowed politely and Ruelon saw him out. Qin Yining slowly put down the teacup. Her indifferent expression was gone. She frowned and pursed her red lips. She felt like there was a big stone pressing down on her heart. She first paced back and forth in the room. She felt that the room was suffocating, so she walked to the courtyard. Under the dim sky, the bamboo forest in the small courtyard rustled and the shadows of the trees were dense. It was as if this was the only place left between heaven and earth. The anger in her heart was stirred up by a sense of justice. Bastard! Qin Yining was so angry that she couldn't help but curse. She fiercely kicked the stone stool, causing it to tilt and fall to the ground, making a muffled bang sound. Ruelan and Qiu Lu were shocked. Mama Zhu hid in the room and didn't dare to come out. Mama Zhan stood in the corridor of the side room and quietly watched Qin Yining. Ruelan supported Qin Yining. "Miss, don't be angry. Take care of yourself." Chapter 34. How could Qin Yining not know that the Tang family's fate was pitiful? But she was just a woman in her boudoir. Her biggest support was her father. She wanted to ask Qin Huayuan for help, but no matter how stupid she was, she knew that Qin Huayuan must have known about this matter a long time ago. He already knew, but he didn't do anything. This already explained his position. Zhao Yun Agency was originally Sun Yu's property. How could Sun Yu not know about this matter? Sun Yu and Duchess Ding both decided to ignore this matter. How could she intervene? Qin Yining thought quickly. If she didn't ask about this matter, what would it turn out to be? Seeing Qin Yining's bad expression, Qiu Lu realized that she had said something wrong. She didn't dare to say anything more. Seeing that Qin Yining had quieted down, Mama Zhan returned to her room. Only Qin Yining, Ruelan, and Qiu Lu were left in the courtyard. Qin Yining looked at the side rooms and the back seats. After confirming that there was no one else, she suppressed her anger and said in a low voice, "This matter needs to be discussed at length." Ruelan could tell from Qin Yining's words that something was wrong. She said anxiously, "Miss, this matter involves Prince Ning. What can a woman in her boudoir like you do? You should just ignore it." Qiu Lu also bit her lip and knelt down, saying, "Miss, this servant spoke without thinking. It's not suitable for you to intervene in this matter. Please don't be affected by this servant." Qin Yining shook her head and helped Qiu Lu stand up. Her gaze was firm and bright as she said, "It's fine if I didn't know. But now that I know, I can't not try. I'm not sure I can save them, but if I don't even dare to try, I'm afraid I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life. Miss, it's better to avoid trouble. You, Ruelan, I was picked up by my foster mother by a stream. If she had the mindset of, the less trouble the better, and refused to adopt me because she was afraid of getting involved in trouble, I'm afraid I would have died a long time ago. How would I be able to stand here and talk to you?" Qin Yining's eyes were very bright, as if they were filled with stars. "Although I've been living a hard life all these years, I've never dared to forget what my foster mother taught me. As a human being, there are always some moral principles that cannot be abandoned. If this matter were to continue, Miss Tang's life would be ruined. Secondly, I'm afraid that shopkeeper Zhong's family will suffer the crazy revenge of Qingliu's group." At this point, Qin Yining sneered. Qing Lu and those people didn't dare to look for Prince Ning or the boss of Zhaoyun Agency, so they could only vent their anger on the shopkeeper. Shopkeeper Zhong didn't do anything wrong, and his family is innocent. Tell me, this matter involves the rest of a young lady's life, and it also involves the lives of an innocent family. How can I pretend that I don't know? But young lady, what can you do? Ruelan was moved by Qin Yining's words, but at the same time, she was worried about her master. Qin Yining shook her head. "I can't ask my father for help. I can only do my best and leave it to fate. Even if I can't save them, at least I've tried my best." Qiu Lu was inspired by Qin Yining's decision and her words. She nodded heavily. "Young lady, please tell me what you want me to do." Qin Yining chuckled, and her white teeth looked as beautiful as white porcelain in the night. "Just do your job well. You can't do anything else." Ruelan was a little worried. "Young lady, no matter what you want to do, if the Prime Minister and old Madam find out, they won't let it go. It will be very bad for you. It hasn't been easy for you to get to where you are now after coming back to the mansion. You should think twice before you act." Qin Yining knew that Ruelan was cautious and that she was worried about her, so she smiled gratefully. "So what if it's the worst? Even if my bones are broken, I'm still my father's daughter. I've lived through the worst days. They won't beat me to death in front of me because they care about their reputation, right? If not, I'll just go back to chopping firewood and gathering herbs to be a savage." Her self-joking tone was very carefree, and the two maidservants were full of pride and enthusiasm. But at this time, a deep male voice suddenly entered their ears. "Well said." Qin Yining was startled and quickly pulled the two maidservants back. But because of her reputation, she didn't dare to say anything before the situation was settled. She only lowered her voice and reprimanded, "Who is it?" The dignified young man on the roof silently covered his face. "Wang Yi, why couldn't you control yourself and make a sound?" The young man next to him was also stunned for a moment. These two people were little Wang Yi, Pang Xiao, and his bodyguard, Huzi, who were regarded as evil stars by Dian's officials and common people, who were visiting the Prime Minister's mansion tonight. Pang Xiao was only stunned for a moment before he jumped into the courtyard and stood in front of Qin Yining without any concealment. Huzi was startled by his master's actions. Before he could react, Pang Xiao's hand shot out like lightning and grabbed Qin Yining's face. The master and servants cried out in alarm. Qin Yining was so scared that she closed her eyes. She felt the weight on her head loosen, and a lock of her long hair suddenly fell down and draped over her shoulder. Then, her cheek was touched by a large, rough hand. The hand was dry and warm, and there were rough calluses on the fingers and palm. It scraped her cheek until it hurt slightly. Was she being molested? Qin Yining cried out in alarm and instinctively hit back. Who knew that she would hit empty air? When she looked again, the man's figure was no longer in front of her. She could only see a tall figure flipping over the wall. She could even hear that person's deep and pleasant laughter. The courtyard was still silent. The bright moon hung high in the sky. The palace lanterns swayed, and the shadows of the bamboos danced. Everything just now seemed like an illusion. "Miss, what's wrong?" Nanny Jean, Nanny Zhu, Luya, and the rest heard the commotion and ran out with lanterns. When they saw Qin Yining and the two servants standing in the courtyard in a daze, they couldn't help but worry and went forward. "Miss, what's wrong? Did you sprain your ankle?" Qin Yining shook his head in shock. No. It's just that I almost fell and got a fright." Ruelon and Xiaolu immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. A perverted thief had barged into the residence and even touched the Mississippi. If news of this spread, how would the miss be able to face others? Both of them insisted that it was Qin Yining who almost fell. Nanny Zhu heaved a sigh of relief. "It's good that you're fine. Miss, it's cold outside. You should go back into the house." Nanny Jean didn't suspect anything and also said, "Miss, if you want to get some fresh air, you should take a walk in the sun during the day. Don't catch a cold now." A group of people clustered around Qin Yining and returned to the main house. At this time, outside the courtyard, Huzi was looking at his Wang Yi with a shocked expression. In his impression, his Wang Yi had always been strict and stern when dealing with people. His gaze was too sharp, and he treated people very coldly. He was also very cautious and did things openly. When it was time to be unreasonable, he would be unreasonable, and when it was time to be cold, he would be cold. However, most of the time, he was very calm and self-controlled. However, what happened tonight completely shattered Huzi's understanding of his master. Wang Yi was holding a hairpin, right? He also seemed to have seen Wang Yi touch the miss's face. His unruly, domineering, and murderous Wang Yi actually jumped into a miss's courtyard in the middle of the night and snatched a hairpin. He even acted like a hooligan while he was at it. If he wasn't blind, then the world must be hallucinating. Pang Xiao looked at the hairpin in his hand with a wooden expression. The hairpin was made of jasper, and 3 flower buds surrounded a blooming begonia flower. It was small and exquisite. The girl's hair was black and shiny, and the hairpin shone brightly in her hair. What was even brighter was her bright eyes and shining teeth when she smiled. He didn't know what was wrong with him. The hand that was holding the hairpin still seemed to be burning. Her face was so smooth. The way she closed her eyes when she was frightened was so cute. And those small and moist lips, what the hell? Pang Xiao tucked the hairpin into his bosom and kept it close to his body. With a dark face, he strode forward as fast as the wind. Huzi hurriedly chased after him. "Wang Yi, The horses are ready. When are we leaving? Tonight. That's good too. Old Madam and Old Madam have been invited to the palace by the Emperor. To prevent any changes, we have to hurry back to Xihua. Yes. Wang Yi, you've taken a fancy to Miss Qin, haven't you? Wang Yi, quiet. Let's hurry.
Yes.
At this moment, Qin Yining was staring blankly at the bean-sized light from the canopy. Who was that person just now? Her hairpin had been snatched away. If that person had bad intentions and used it to accuse her of having an affair with another man, her reputation would be completely ruined. She had even been touched on the face. Until now, she still felt her face burning. She could even feel the calluses on that person's palm rubbing against her face. That person should be someone who did manual labor or held a weapon all year round, right? Actually, she did not see the man's face clearly because the man's back was facing the light. She could only see his tall and thin figure clearly. She was only as tall as the man's shoulder. If the man wanted to kill her, he could have broken her neck with one hand. However, she didn't feel any murderous intent or hostility. She hunted all year round, so she was very sensitive to hostility and murderous intent. If that person had the slightest intention of harming her, she would have felt it as soon as he stared at her maliciously. Then why did that person suddenly appear in her courtyard? How much did that person hear of what she said? Would things develop in a direction that she couldn't control? Qin Yining felt her heart was in a mess. She turned over in annoyance. Ruelon, who was on night duty outside the canopy, heard the noise and hurriedly put on her clothes. Miss, are you all right? I'm fine. Qin Yining sighed and said, Today's matter must not be spread. This servant understands. I definitely won't speak carelessly. Qin Yining closed her eyes. Sleep. No matter what, she still had to live her life. The next morning, Qin Yining went to greet the Sun Clan and the old madam as usual. Then she returned to the old madam. Today, I'm going to take a look at the shops under Zhao Yun agency. I've agreed with Master Zhong that I'm going to check the accounts. The old madam only told her to bring a few more people and agreed. Qin Yining went back to the courtyard to dress up. Then she left with Qiu Lu and Ruelon in a carriage. Chapter 35. But when they arrived at the corner gate of Prince Ning's mansion, they were worried. Qin Yining didn't send an invitation and came alone. She couldn't prove her identity. Also, as Prime Minister Qin's legitimate daughter, she was nothing in front of Prince Ning. It all depended on Prince Ning's mood whether he would see her or not. Faced with the persuasion of shopkeeper Zhong and the smiling head maidservant, the doorman was somewhat unable to resist. He stared at the oil wall carriage for a long time, afraid that he would let in some troublemaker and lose his life because of it. He thought for a while and told the two people in front of him, Wait a moment, I'm going to report to the housekeeper. Then he ran away. Ruelon and shopkeeper Zhong went to Qin Yining's carriage to report. Qin Yining thought for a while and sighed. Bring me the veil hat. I'll go talk to them myself. Boss, why don't we wait and see what they say? Shopkeeper Zhong was hesitant. No need to wait. We don't have an invitation. If we don't let them see me, I'm afraid they won't see Prince Ning so easily. Ruelon and Qiu Lu didn't understand what Qin Yining meant. Could they let her in as soon as they saw her? Shopkeeper Zhong was a wily old fox. Thinking of Qin Yining's appearance he saw yesterday and Lord Ning's preferences, he immediately understood. Qin Yining wouldn't use a honey trap on Prince Ning, but he would use beauty as a stepping stone. When the doorman saw a beautiful girl come to see him, he would most likely guess and report back. Boss was willing to go to such lengths to save their family. Shopkeeper Zhong was even more moved. He said in a trembling voice, Boss, you've been wronged. I'll never forget your kindness. Qin Yining shook his head and sighed. Since things have come to this, Shopkeeper Zhong, you don't have to be so polite. By now, she had put on the veil hat. Holding Ruelon's hand, she stepped on the red lacquered wooden stool and got off the carriage. Today, she was wearing a honeyed satin waistcoat with floral makeup, a white plain gauze dress, a gorilla red cloak inlaid with white rabbit fur, and a white gauze hat. Although her appearance could not be seen clearly from her dignified standing posture, one could see that she was a well-educated young lady of a noble family. By this time, The doorman had already called the head housekeeper out. As soon as the two of them came out of the corner gate, they saw the charming young lady by the side of the carriage. In their hearts, they had a hint of understanding. The housekeeper was already in his early 40s. His plump body was wrapped in a dark blue brocade robe and a six-jointed hat. When he smiled, his eyes were so narrow that they were almost invisible. "Greetings to this young lady. You were the one who requested to see our Wang Yi." Qin Yining smiled and said in a gentle voice, "Yes, I'll have to trouble you to pass the message. Just say that Prime Minister Qin's daughter has something important to tell Wang Yi." The curtained hat was only covered by a thin white veil. A gust of wind blew, revealing her delicate chin and smiling lips. The housekeeper stared blankly. He secretly wondered what this young lady was like. Now that she was covered up, she was already attractive enough. Wang Yi should be interested in meeting her. Right at this time, a carriage slowly drove over. Everyone turned around to look and saw a vermilion, ornate, eight-treasure tasseled carriage slowly stop a few steps away. The carriage was extremely luxurious. The body of the carriage was made of navy blue brocade. Under the sunlight, the tasseled pearls swayed as the carriage moved forward. It was extremely beautiful. The coachman jumped down from the shaft of the carriage. The servants lifted the carriage curtain and saw a tall and thin young man lean out of the carriage. The young man's hair was tied up with a jade crown. He had a long face, and his appearance could not be considered extremely handsome. However, from his scholarly appearance, there was a hint of understanding. His eyebrows were thick and long, and there was a faint Sichuan character between his eyebrows. His skin was fair, and the snow-white fox fur collar on his shoulders brushed against his face when the wind blew, making him appear very noble. When the head housekeeper saw this person, he immediately smiled and went forward to bow. Just as he was about to speak, the young man raised his hand to stop him. "This young lady is?" The young man's voice was a bit hoarse. His gaze fell on Qin Yining. The head housekeeper respectfully replied, "She is the young lady of Prime Minister Qin's family. She wants to see Wang Yi." The young man played with the embroidered pouch at his waist with one hand. Then he smiled and cupped his hands in greeting. "Hello, Miss Qin." "Hello, young master." Qin Yining returned the greeting. The young man said, "Young lady wants to see Prince Ning? Then please come in with me." Qin Yining looked up in surprise. Through the veil of the hat, he saw the young man's expression as if it was natural. The head housekeeper also did not have any intention of objecting. This should be the master of Prince Ning's residence. Looking at his age, perhaps he was Prince Ning's son? However, he did not call Prince Ning father, but Prince Ning. Qin Yining quickly thought of the Prince Ning who had been adopted by the emperor. After being a prince for less than a year, he had been returned to the Prince Ning's residence because the emperor's concubine had given birth to a prince. This Prince Ning was said to be a prince, but he was not the emperor's biological son. He was said to be the heir apparent, but he had been adopted by the emperor. His position in Prince Ning's residence was very awkward. Qin Yining led Ruelan, Qiu Lu, and shopkeeper Zhong into the Prince Ning's residence behind the young man. They passed through the E-gate, circled around a large man-made lake, passed through rockery, and arrived at a courtyard. Entering the main hall, a horizontal board hung high in the middle of the room. The words "Benevolence" were written on it. Below the horizontal board was a painting of the 8 horses. Looking down, there was a long table made of yellow rosewood. On the table, there was a glazed flower vase on the left and right. There were fresh flowers in the vase. In the center, there was a carved brass incense burner burning with an unknown incense. It smelled faintly of pine oil and sandalwood. The young man was the first to step across the shiny black marble floor. He directly sat at the head of the table and said with a smile, "Miss, please sit." Seeing him sit in such a relaxed manner, Qin Yining was even more certain of her guess. After smiling and thanking him, she took off her veiled hat and sat down. Ruelan, Qiu Lu, and Master Zhong all stood behind Qin Yining with their heads lowered. When the young man saw Qin Yining's true appearance, he was stunned at first. He immediately lowered his eyes and coughed softly. He said, "Miss, are you the precious daughter that Prime Minister Qin just found?" "Yes, I am." Qin Yining was somewhat nervous. She was afraid that the young man would ask her the purpose of her visit. After all, it was one thing to discuss the matter of Prince Ning snatching someone in person, but it was easy to be misunderstood as making up Prince Ning's mistakes if she talked about it behind his back. As a result, Qin Yining deliberately didn't look at the young man. She raised her eyes to look at the calligraphy hanging in front of her, and then looked at the painting of the 8 horses hanging above the head of the table. The painting depicted 8 majestic wild horses galloping across a grassland. There was no signature or seal. The young man couldn't help but want to look at Qin Yining's face. Seeing that she seemed to be interested in the painting of the 8 horses, he asked with a smile, "Miss, what do you think of this painting?" Qin Yining was stumped. She didn't know much about painting, so she could only laugh dryly and say, "It's very well painted." The young man originally thought that she was knowledgeable about painting. He didn't expect to hear such a dry sentence. He was a bit surprised. When Qin Yining saw the young man's expression, she also felt that her words were too insincere. She coughed and said, "The painting of the horses is very lively. However, I am certain that the person who painted this painting has never seen a group of horses before." The young man was very surprised. He stood up and looked at the painting with his hands behind his back. He then asked Qin Yining curiously, "Why do you say that? I don't think there is anything wrong with this painting." When Qin Yining saw that the young man was so serious, she blinked doubtfully and said softly, "I grew up in the mountains. I was once saved by a group of wild horses like this. Therefore, I have some understanding of what a group of horses looks like." He had heard that Prime Minister Qin's biological daughter had been swapped away and had led a wandering life for 14 years. At this moment, the young man was completely interested in Qin Yining. He continued to ask, "If Miss doesn't mind, please tell me in detail. What does a group of wild horses look like?" Qin Yining smiled and said, "That year, I was attacked by wild wolves. I panicked and ran out of the forest. I saw a group of wild horses eating grass in a large grassland. Because no one could save me, I was too scared. Therefore, I didn't think much and directly rushed towards the group of horses. At that time, it was a leading horse that saved me." Recalling the past, Qin Yining seemed to be able to see the handsome red wild horse. Her smile gradually widened. The leading horse of the group of horses, just like the one running in the middle of the painting, was bigger than the other horses. Its mane was very long and it was very strong. The leading horse was handsome and brave. In times of danger, it could protect the group of horses. It could even fight against the wild wolves. At that time, it was because I rushed towards the group of horses and attracted the wild wolves. The leading horse went berserk and chased the wolves away. That was how I survived." Speaking of this, Qin Yining stood up and walked 3 steps behind the young man. She looked up at the painting of the 8 horses. The horses in this painting are handsome and the painting is very vivid. However, perhaps the painter wanted to highlight the leading horse's handsomeness, so he painted it in the middle. You should know that in a group of wild horses, the leading horse is the leader. This is completely wrong. That's why I said that the painter must have never seen a real group of wild horses. The young man nodded repeatedly. He turned around and looked at Qin Yining with a burning gaze. His gaze fell on her bright eyes, but he quickly looked away. His ears turned red. "Miss, I didn't know you had such a rich experience. I've learned a lot this time." Qin Yining quickly shook her head. "Young master, you're exaggerating. I really don't know much about painting and calligraphy. I can only see that this painting is good. The rest is just nonsense. I hope young master can forgive me." "Miss, what are you saying?" Just as the two of them were exchanging pleasantries, they heard someone say, "Wang Yi is here." Then, there was the sound of footsteps. Looking in the direction of the sound, they saw a man in his 50s walk out from the back hall. This man was very tall. He wore a dark purple brocade robe and a purple gold crown on his head. He had a full beard, so it was impossible to see his face clearly. As he walked with a majestic gait. In his arms was an enchanting woman wearing a light green muslin dress. When Prince Ning walked into the front hall, his eyes lit up when he saw Qin Yining. Then, he saw the young man next to her. He laughed heartily and cupped his hands. The young man returned the greeting and said, "Miss, you still have things to talk about with Wang Yi. I won't disturb you." After he said that, he politely bowed and walked to the back of the hall. Chapter 36. As soon as they saw Prince Ning, Ruelon and Qiu Lu, the two maidservants who had never seen such a big scene, were so scared that their backs were sweating. Even Master Zhong, who was experienced and knowledgeable, was so scared that he couldn't raise his head. Prince Ning had a reputation for being tyrannical and licentious. Because he led troops to war, he had a vicious aura around him. His voice was low and loud, and his words made people's hearts tremble. Whether it was the pressure of his status or his strength, ordinary people didn't dare to look at him directly. At this time, Prince Ning knew that he was going to meet a woman in her boudoir, but he still held a beautiful concubine in his arms. His restless hands rubbed the woman's waist and chest, causing the woman to laugh coquettishly and unrestrainedly. His irreverent attitude was self-evident. Facing this kind of Prince Ning, any young lady would be embarrassed and afraid, retreating like the plague. Even men would feel humiliated. But Qin Yining didn't move. As if he couldn't see what Prince Ning was doing, he bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Prince Ning. I'm from the Qin clan, the only daughter of Prime Minister Qin. I took over the business of Zhao Yun Agency a few days ago. As the new owner of Zhao Yun Agency, I came to see Prince Ning about Miss Tang." "You're quite bold." Prince Ning snorted. "I thought that Qin Ming raised an interesting daughter who admires this king's strength and came to see you." As soon as he said this, the beautiful concubine in Prince Ning's arms giggled. Qiu Lu and Ruelon were angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. They lowered their heads and didn't know what to do. Master Zhong broke out in cold sweat. He began to regret asking Qin Yining to come and ask for help. He actually wanted a lady in her boudoir to be humiliated in front of Prince Ning. Qin Yining didn't even frown. He just pretended that he didn't hear Prince Ning's words. He said, "Prince Ning is indeed powerful and famous. I grew up in the countryside and often heard people talk about Prince Ning's heroic achievements in leading the army to resist Zhou. It's really admirable." Ning Wang did not expect that not only this girl was not frightened by him, she even flattered him. He could not help but find it amusing. Although he had a beautiful concubine in his arms, he leaned forward and laughed aloud. "Well said." This king couldn't bear to see Zhou usurping the throne like a bunch of rascals. In the name of overthrowing tyranny, they're actually doing shameful things. Qin Yining also smiled. Ruelon, Qiu Lu, and Manager Zhong all let out a sigh of relief. Just when everyone thought that Qin Yining would continue to flatter Prince Ning, Qin Yining changed the topic and said, "But Prince Ning, do you know that if Miss Tang continues to be in your hands, your reputation will be ruined?" The slightly relaxed atmosphere became tense again because of this sentence. King Ning's thick eyebrows were tightly knitted, and the beard on his face seemed to be trembling because of anger. He roared with a rough male voice, "How dare you!" Manager Zhong was so frightened that his body trembled and he broke out in a cold sweat. The two maidservants' legs went soft and they directly knelt down. Qin Yining chuckled and said, "If I didn't have the courage, I wouldn't have dared to come to Wang Ye's place today." Wang Yi is wise and powerful, so he naturally has a good understanding of the current situation in Dian. Saying that Dian is invincible is pure boasting. I once struggled to survive in the border city of Liang and the surrounding big cities, so I naturally know that 9 out of 10 houses are empty and starving people are everywhere. The high officials and nobles in the capital are like frogs at the bottom of a well who don't know the hardships of the outside world. But with Wang Ye's experience and wit, how could he not see that in Dian, there will be a day when the city will be breached? These words directly made Master Zhong's body go soft, and he directly knelt down. Ning Wang's face darkened, and he angrily glared at Qin Yining. "You woman, how dare you? You actually dare to curse me in Dian. Do you believe that this king can tear you to pieces at any time without informing your father?" Qin Yining's heart trembled when she saw Ning Wang's rage. But things had already come to this point, and the arrow had already been knocked on the bow. She curtsied and said, "The reason Wang Yi is angry is because I'm speaking the truth. Moreover, I'm not saying this to slander Dian. If there really is a day when the country is breached, although I'm a woman, I won't be greedy for life and afraid of death. What I'm saying today is all for Wang Ye's sake." Qin Yining's eyes sparkled like stars. Wang Yi knows in his heart that in the future, there will be a day when the soldiers will arrive at the city gates. Since ancient times, whenever a monarch does something wrong, there will always be a devilish woman by his side. Daji, Taijin, and the like might end up like the Empress in the future. Today, Director Tang is a criminal who attempted to murder the Empress, but in the future, there will be a day when he will be a hero who dies to eliminate the demon Empress. When that day comes, it will probably be a completely different world. When that time comes, what will Your Highness Ningguang do? After Qin Yining said this, she lowered her head and didn't say anything else. She had already said everything she wanted to say. Now it was up to Ningguang to decide. Whether it would succeed or not, she had already done her best. At this time, Ningguang had already repeated Qin Yining's words over and over in his mind. In reality, the meaning of Qin Yining's words was very clear. In the future, if there really was a day when the soldiers of Dezhou arrived at the city gates, with the emperor's muddle-headedness and cowardice, he would definitely push out a scapegoat who would bring disaster to the country and its people. The empress, who had mesmerized him in the past, would be the first choice. Once the empress was pushed out, there was no doubt that she would die. The Chao family would become criminals and would never be able to rise again. Moreover, if there really was such a day, perhaps the Dian would no longer exist. Just as Qin Yining had said, when the time came, the world would be turned upside down, and there would be a new world. As a member of the imperial family, if Ningguang wanted to live peacefully in the world, it wouldn't be as easy as it was now. If he still kept the daughter of the Tang family by his side, those tigers and wolves in Qinglu couldn't touch him now, but what about in the future? Ningguang had always understood this. What he didn't expect was that a woman in the boudoir could not only think so far ahead, but also had enough courage to say such rebellious words in front of him. Moreover, she didn't do it for herself, but to save people. It seemed that this woman wasn't a vase with an empty appearance. She was an intelligent and chivalrous woman with a hidden beauty. When Ningguang looked at Qin Yining, admiration flashed through his eyes. Ningguang didn't say anything, which made everyone in the room nervous. There was a thin layer of sweat in Qin Yining's palms. She could feel that Ningguang had been using his knife-like eyes to cut her body, as if he wanted to peel off a layer of her skin. It wasn't that she wasn't afraid, but since she had decided to save people, she couldn't back down. After a while, Ningguang said coldly, "Miss Tang is indeed in this king's hands. If you want to take her back, what are you going to do with her? Send her back to the musical house?" Qin Yining was delighted. Since Ningguang said so, there was hope. She thought for a while and said, "This thing has become so big that I don't plan to send Miss Tang back to the musical house. If Wang Yi really gives her to me, I want to take her with me and make her my maidservant. As for how to explain it to the musical house, I think they won't dare to do anything with Wang Ye's deterrence, as long as Wang Yi is willing to give her to me." If she was outside, she would inevitably be targeted by Grand Preceptor Chao's people. Even if she was rescued now, she would lose her life in the future. Anyway, she was the daughter of the Prime Minister, so those people would have scruples about her. Hearing this, Ningguang laughed loudly. His laughter shook the dust on the beam and almost made it fall down. He patted the beautiful concubine's perky butt in his arms. The beautiful concubine understood. She glanced at Ningguang coquettishly and walked into the back hall, swaying her slender waist. Not long after, she heard a series of footsteps coming from afar. She looked up and saw two maidservants accompanying a little Taoist nun around the floor-to-ceiling window. The little Taoist nun was petite with a pair of round eyes on her apple-shaped face. She was very cute. Her loose Taoist robe hung loosely on her body, making her look like a child who had stolen an adult's clothes. Seeing the little Taoist nun, Ningguang said with a smile, "Sister Ming, did you hear what they said just now?" The little Taoist nun turned to Qin Yining and smiled sweetly. The two cute dimples on her cheeks were very obvious. "I heard everything. Thank you for your kindness, sister." Ningguang said, "Then are you willing to be this sister's maidservant?" The little Taoist nun nodded. "Sister Qin is very warm-hearted. I'm all alone now, so I can't be the young miss I used to be. Naturally, I've accepted reality. Since I can't go back to the Taoist temple or the school, I'm willing to follow Sister Qin and treat her as my master." I'll serve her loyally for the rest of my life to repay Sister Qin's kindness for saving me today." Ning Wang nodded. His voice was so gentle that it seemed like he was a different person. "Miss Qin, this is the daughter of Grand Preceptor Tang, Miss Tang Ming. This king sees your sincerity, courage, and intelligence. He thinks you'll be able to protect her well. This king is relieved to hand her over to you." He smiled warmly at the little Taoist nun. The little Taoist nun, who was Tang Ming, smiled back. She knelt down properly and bowed to Ning Wang. "Sister Ming thanks Wang Yi for protecting me these days. I can't repay you for taking the blame for me." Ning Wang smiled. "This king is indebted to your father. This king only did a small favor. Besides, even if it weren't for you, how could this king's reputation be any less? You may leave." He waved his hand. Tang Ming stood up and walked to Qin Yining's side with a smile. She bowed and said respectfully, "Mississippi, Qin Yining, Master Zhong, Ruelon, and Qiu Lu were all stunned. Things had changed so quickly that they couldn't react in time. In Qin Yining's imagination, it should be a great beauty in distress who was caught and ravaged by Prince Ning in his mansion. Qin Yining and Tang Ming were the same age. Qin Yining was born like this, so he assumed that Tang Ming was the same. He didn't expect that the real Tang Ming was such a lovely little girl. She looked completely different from the great beauty in distress in his imagination, and the ravaging she thought was even more ridiculous. Wang Yi wasn't a pedophile, and it sounded like he used to be friends with Grand Preceptor Tang. Yes, it was inappropriate to keep Tang Ming in the musical house or the Zhaoyun agency. There were too many people outside. If Grand Preceptor Chao hurt someone, there would be plenty of opportunities for him to take action. With Grand Preceptor Chao's character, how could he let go of the family who had once poisoned his daughter? He would definitely kill them all. Chapter 37. The truth suddenly hit Qin Yining in the face and caught her off guard. He vaguely felt that he had been fooled. But looking at the lovely girl with an apple-like face and big eyes in front of him, Qin Yining felt lucky. Fortunately, Tang Ming was fine. Fortunately, things were not as he imagined. "Thank you, Wang Yi." Qin Yining solemnly bowed to Prince Ning. "Then I'll take Miss Tang away." Prince Ning calmly sat in the first seat and waved to Qin Yining. Qin Yining smiled at Tang Ming and said, "Miss Tang, please come with me." "Miss, you don't have to be so polite. Just call me by my name. From now on, you will be the master, and I will be the servant. I will never forget the kindness you showed me today." Tang Ming blinked her big round eyes and said very seriously. Qin Yining smiled bitterly. "I didn't save you. It seems like my actions were superfluous." Tang Ming shook her head repeatedly. "Miss, since my father asked me to become a monk with the pharmacopoeia handed down in my family, I knew that something would happen to the Tang family sooner or later. But then I really ruined it. Although I became an outsider, I got used to the fickleness of the world because of what happened to the Tang family. The musical house took me back and forced me to return to the secular world. I refused, and they tortured me. Later, the Zhaoyun agency rented me. I was brought back by Wang Yi, and I lived a peaceful life for a few days." Tang Ming's eyes were filled with tears. "Miss, except for Wang Yi, you are the only one who took the initiative to help my family. You and I met by chance, and there is no karma between us. You, the daughter of a boudoir, can withstand the pressure of rumors outside to come to the mansion to save me. I know the risk you took. I can't repay this kindness in my life." Her words moved Qin Yining, Master Zhong, Ruelon, and Qiu Lu. Qin Yining saved people because he didn't want a good girl's life to be ruined, and he didn't want Master Zhong's family to be implicated in the disaster. He never thought that he would be grateful or rewarded. Now that he heard Tang Ming's words, he blushed first. He took Tang Ming and Prince Ning's hand, bowed again, and left quickly with his men. Prince Ning had been sitting at the head of the table and had seen everything. Suddenly, he smiled playfully and said, "I didn't expect that old fox Qin Ming could raise such a warm-hearted girl." "That's right." A person slowly walked out from behind the ground cover. It was the young man that Qin Yining had met earlier. Prince Ning casually cupped his hands towards the young man. "Did your highness hear what she said just now?" The young man nodded, a trace of distress in his expression. "She's right. These stubborn old fools in the capital who think they're invincible are actually frogs at the bottom of a well. Even now, they still have the time to wrangle over whether to fight or not. This king has seen through them long ago. These people are a bunch of useless trash. If they really do break into the city in the future, they won't be so scared that they'll piss their pants. Ha ha ha. Prince Ning laughed loudly. Hearing this, the young man also burst into laughter. He stood beside Prince Ning with his hands behind his back and looked at the painting of the 8 horses for a long time. Slowly, a blush appeared on his face. Prince Ning understood, but he didn't point it out. Instead, he asked, "Has your highness really made up your mind?" The young man paused, then said, "What? Does your highness not agree and want to back out?" Prince Ning looked into the young man's eyes, his gaze sharp. He said in a mocking voice, "This king wants to back out? This king didn't expect your highness to take the initiative to impeach Grand Preceptor Chow. This king has always thought that your highness was only a master of calligraphy and painting and didn't care about politics." The young man smiled bitterly. "Is your highness laughing at my lack of achievements for many years?" Prince Ning laughed loudly and said, "This king originally only wanted to make an alliance with Duke Ding, but that little fox son Yuanming refused to take a stand. Today, to help you and me, he even pulled in Qin Ming. Now, it's easier to impeach that old thing Chao Bingzhong." The young man was a little worried. "I'm afraid that Prime Minister Qin won't agree." "He has to agree even if he doesn't want to. His good daughter has made the decision for him. No matter what, Tang Meng is already his daughter's maidservant and will be protected by the Qin's mansion. Qing Lu and those two-faced cowards will definitely take a side when they see this result." Prince Ning patted the young man's shoulder to comfort him, saying, "Your Highness, don't worry. This matter will definitely succeed. That coquettish woman babbles all day long and doesn't do anything serious. She can't give birth to an egg, and she wants to cut off my brother's bloodline? That's just wishful thinking. Even a little girl knows her end, but she herself can't figure it out. How ridiculous. This king is going to expose her coquettish appearance this time. Let's see what she can do without her father's support." At this time, Qin Yining had already taken Tang Ming into the carriage. Master Zhong, Ruelan, and Qiu Lu were all following outside. They rushed all the way to the Cloud Stepping Inn under the banner of Zhao Yun Department. Qin Yining smiled and said, "You stay in the inn first. In these 2 days, I'll find an opportunity to come out and take you to renounce asceticism. After renouncing asceticism, you'll enter the mansion and follow me. We can also take care of each other in the first place." "Yes." Tang Ming smiled and nodded. "Miss, you don't have to be so polite with me. I'll be your maidservant from now on. You can just order me around." Qin Yining nodded. She didn't expect Tang Ming to accept reality so calmly. Perhaps it was easier for people to recognize their own position after experiencing a great storm and being unable to turn the situation around and being driven into a corner. The group of people arrived at the Cloud Stepping Inn. Qin Yining ordered Master Zhong to arrange a secluded courtyard for Tang Ming to settle down first. Then she called Master Zhong over and said, "I'll have to trouble Master Zhong to take care of Miss Tang. I'll think of a way to come out in these 2 days." At this time, Master Zhong had resolved the crisis and was feeling refreshed. When he looked at Qin Yining again, his eyes were filled with respect and intimacy. He bowed and said, "Miss, don't worry. I'll definitely do it well." Qin Yining heard the change in the way he addressed her. She smiled and said, "Good. In the future, I'll have to rely on Master Zhong for many things. It's just that it's getting late today. The matter of checking the accounts can only be changed to another day." "Yes, miss, don't worry. This little one has already seen the accounts sent over. When miss has the time, you can look through them. If the Fu's old lord asks, miss can say that you went around the shops under Zhao Yun Agency today and inspected them. You can come out another day to check the accounts. We have 3 restaurants under our banner. They are Returning Forest Restaurant, Drunken Cloud Restaurant, and Jade Cup Restaurant. There are also 2 inns. One is the Cloud Stepping Inn that we're currently at. The other is Yushang Inn on the eastern main street. Master Zhong is quick-witted. I'll just reply like that." Qin Yining looked at the sky and said, "It's getting late. I should go back." "Yes, This little one will have them escort Mississippi. This little one's entire family will definitely repay Miss for saving our lives. Miss, please accept my bow. Master Zhong said this and knelt down to pay his respects. Qin Yining helped Master Zhong up and said with a smile, Master Zhong, you don't have to be so polite. In the future, we need to support each other even more to go further. Master Zhong nodded with a smile. Mrs. Right. Qin Yining told Master Zhong to take good care of Tang Ming and arrange for Tang Ming to return to the secular world. Then she left with Ruelan and Xiao Lu, hurrying back to the Prime Minister's Fu. In the carriage, Ruelan and Xiao Lu were originally excited. However, when they saw Qin Yining's expression, they became worried. He had successfully rescued her, but why did the young lady not look happy? Both of them had questions. Ruelan thought more, so she didn't immediately ask. Xiao Lu, on the other hand, was straightforward and asked, Miss, why are you unhappy? Qin Yining came back to her senses and murmured with a sigh, this time, I'm afraid something bad is going to happen. What? Ruelan and Xiao Lu's hearts skipped a beat. They said nervously, why do you say that? What's going to happen? Qin Yining said in a low voice, think about what Ningguang said today and his attitude. He took her away to protect Miss Tang. However, he pretended to kidnap her and didn't explain to the Zhao Yun agency. He allowed the notoriety of kidnapping to spread throughout the capital. Why? Ruelan and Xiao Lu were stunned. He did this just to use Qing Lu to put pressure on the Zhao Yun agency. If the Zhao Yun agency really couldn't withstand the pressure and went to Ningguang to ask for Miss Tang, I think they would be able to get her back easily like today. Miss, you mean? Ruelan thought it through and couldn't help but turn pale. Everyone knows that Ningguang kidnapped Miss Tang and refused to return her. However, when the Zhao Yun agency went to ask for her, Ningguang actually returned her. I'm afraid everyone will think that Ningguang and the Zhao Yun agency have a good relationship and are in cahoots. In the past, the owner of the Zhao Yun agency was my eldest cousin, and he had the Ding General Manor behind him. If things went according to the original development, everyone would think that Ding General Manor and Ningguang were in cahoots. But now, I'm the one who started it. I'm not only the daughter of the Prime Minister, but also the granddaughter of Ding General Manor. Qin Yining's face was very pale when she said this, and her hands and feet were as cold as ice. This time, I'm afraid that I fell into Ningguang's trap on behalf of my eldest cousin. I accidentally tied Ding General Manor and the Prime Minister to Ningguang's side. Just wait and see. It won't be long before the news that I successfully took Miss Tang away will spread. Xiao Lu's eyes turned red when she heard this. She stomped her feet and said, I thought that Ningguang was a chivalrous person. I didn't expect him to be so evil. In order to win over Ding General Manor, he actually used such a method. Yes, Ruelan also said. So, Duchess Ding's arrangement. Ruelan suddenly realized that her words were suspected of sowing discord, so she hurriedly stopped talking. Qin Yining said, Grandmother may not have bad intentions. She just thought that since I'm a little girl, the only way to deal with it is to let Master Zhong take the blame, and then I'll change the head shopkeeper. In this way, it doesn't matter if I don't take the blame. But neither grandmother nor my father thought that I would go and ask for Tangling. Ruelan persuaded, Miss, now that things have come to this, you have good intentions. Now the best thing to do is to think about how to reply to the old madam and the Prime Minister. What if they blame you? Qin Yining smiled bitterly. She had only returned to the Fu for a few days, but she had already experienced so many people's fickleness and schemes. She originally thought that after returning home, her life would be very peaceful. Rich families didn't lack food and clothing, and at least they wouldn't be as dark as those struggling to survive at the bottom. But she didn't expect that the people in these wealthy families would scheme and frame others for benefits and power. They weren't any less than those struggling to survive in the streets. Qin Yining took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. She began to think about the impact this matter would have on the Prime Minister's manor, Ding General Manor, and herself. Chapter 38. By the time she returned to the Prime Minister's residence, the sky had already darkened, and it was snowing. Qin Yining walked to Xixiao Garden with a paper umbrella under the service of two maidservants. She first went to greet old madam. Old Madam had just set up dinner. The members of the Sun Clan, Second Madam, and Third Madam were all respectfully waiting on the side. Qin Huaining accompanied Old Madam to eat. "Sister-y, you're back. You haven't eaten dinner yet, right? Come and eat with me." Seeing Qin Yining enter, Old Madam smiled and instructed Ji Xiang, "Send someone to bring Mrs. Food Box over." Ji Xiang smiled and answered, "Yes." When he passed by Qin Yining, he respectfully bowed before leaving. "Many thanks, Old Madam." Qin Yining was slightly relieved. At the very least, she would be able to eat this dinner. On the way back, Qin Yining had already imagined several ways her father and Old Madam would punish her. None of them would be easy. The worst-case scenario was that it would happen immediately and she wouldn't have time to prepare. She could be considered lucky to be able to eat her fill before the incident happened. Qin Yining thought optimistically. For a moment, she felt that if her father and Old Madam knew that she only thought about eating, they might be angered to death. She also felt that it was funny. The depression of doing a good thing but getting into trouble was finally relieved. After eating dinner, Qin Yining told Old Madam what she had discussed with shopkeeper Zhong. "Today, I looked around and was delayed for a few hours. I have to go check the accounts another day." Old Madam didn't care about these things. Qin Yining was a girl. In any case, she wouldn't cause trouble for her. Just as the room was filled with harmony, they suddenly heard footsteps outside, followed by a servant's respectful greeting, "First Master." "Old Madam, First Master is back." Someone replied into the room and lifted the bamboo curtain for Qin Huaiyuan. Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. He knew that things were not going well, so he stood up with Huaining and stood to the side. Qin Huaiyuan entered the door. He first bowed to the Old Madam, then nodded to the Sun Clan, Second Madam, and Third Madam. Old Madam asked with concern, "Has Brother Ming eaten dinner yet? Should I ask them to prepare?" "There's no need, Mother. I still have something important to do." Qin Huaiyuan turned around and looked at Qin Yining. His eyes were cold. It was a coldness that Qin Yining had never seen on Qin Huaiyuan before. Qin Huaiyuan looked at Qin Yining's face, which was very similar to his own when he was young, and his clenched fists tightened. His voice was trembling and hoarse as he suppressed his anger. He asked fiercely, "Qin Yining, what have you done today?" This reprimand shocked everyone who had been chatting and laughing. Everyone looked at the father and daughter who were confronting each other at the same time. Qin Huaining used a lot of effort to prevent himself from showing a gloating expression. Sun Clan's wife asked with a puzzled expression, "What's wrong with Laoi? If there's anything, we can talk about it. Don't disturb Mother." After the incident at Duke Ding's Fu, she had changed her view of Qin Yining and subconsciously wanted to protect her. Qin Huaiyuan was too lazy to pay attention to this woman from the Sun Clan. He didn't even look at her and only stared straight at Qin Yining. Qin Yining sighed softly. She lifted her skirt and knelt down, saying, replying to father, "Daughter fell into Prince Ning's trap today. Things have indeed developed in a direction that daughter didn't expect." Old Madam, Sun Clan, Qin Huaining, and the others didn't understand what she meant. Upon hearing this, Qin Huaiyuan's uncontrollable anger, which was like a volcanic eruption, was suddenly choked. He originally thought that Qin Yining was young, spirited, chivalrous, impulsive, and brainless young miss. However, the words "fell into Prince Ning's trap" quietly showed him her political sensitivity. It seemed that he had underestimated his daughter. Not only was she courageous, but she was also very intelligent. Qin Huaiyuan was originally full of anger and wanted to punish Qin Yining, but now he felt a burst of helplessness. He thought, it would be great if this wasn't a daughter but a son. If he had a son who could cause such trouble for him and come home nervously to ask for his father's support, the scene would be very interesting. Unfortunately, Qin Huaiyuan pursed his lips and stared at Qin Yining without saying a word. Qin Yining knelt submissively with her back ramrod straight. Although her expression was calm, she was so nervous that her hands and feet were cold. Everyone didn't understand what kind of riddle the father and son were playing. Old Madam couldn't help but ask, "Brother Ming, what exactly happened?" Qin Huaiyuan sighed, lifted his clothes, and sat down on the side. He then recounted how Qin Yining single-handedly went to Prince Ning's mansion to ask for Qin Yining and successfully got her back. The group of people was dumbfounded. How dare you? Sister E, how dare you? Old Madam pointed at Qin Yining and said, a girl in the boudoir actually dared to meet an outsider without permission. Have you learned the rules these days? She then angrily glared at the Sun Clan and said, eldest daughter-in-law, this is the good girl that you taught. The Sun Clan felt that they had lost face. She rushed up and fiercely slapped Qin Yining. This time, she used all her strength. Her sharp nails scratched Qin Yining's cheeks, leaving 2 bloodstains. The Sun Clan's hands hurt from the slap. Qin Yining's cheeks quickly swelled from the slap, and a trace of blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. The Sun Clan's hatred wasn't appeased. They were reprimanded by Old Madam for not teaching their daughter well, so they felt very wronged and couldn't help but scold. I told you to restrain your vulgar behavior after returning to the mansion, but you didn't listen. Where did a girl like you get such courage to take the initiative to meet an outsider? Did you listen to my words in one ear and forget them in the other? You're not sensible, but you caused our eldest branch to be humiliated. I'll beat you to death, you unfilial daughter. The Sun Clan raised their hands and was about to slap her again. Qin Huayuan coldly looked at Old Madam and the Sun Clan's teaching. He only listened to their women's opinions and couldn't grasp the main point at all. They even revolved this matter around the topic of not meeting an outsider. He felt a burst of weariness in his heart. How could these people understand the matters of the imperial court? In contrast, he felt that Qin Yining's words of falling into Prince Ning's trap were very clear. Even if she made a mistake, he didn't dislike this daughter. Enough. Qin Huayuan impatiently waved away the Sun Clan's slap that was about to land and reprimanded. Your rules aren't good, but you're so ruthless when teaching your daughter? I think you're the one who should learn rules. The Sun Clan's eyes widened in disbelief, and tears quickly accumulated in her eyes. She angrily said, what are you saying, master? What do you mean by my rules aren't good? Didn't I teach my daughter a lesson for you? If you're not willing to let me teach her a lesson, why did you say this in front of us? If you don't want to teach her a lesson, don't tell us. You're simply unreasonable. Qin Huayuan frowned and looked at Qin Yining. He said, Sister E, come with me. After he finished speaking, he turned and walked out. Qin Yining stood up silently and saluted Old Madam and the others. Then, she followed Qin Huayuan out of the side hall. Inside the room, the Sun Clan watched Qin Huayuan and Qin Yining leave. She was so angry that she cried loudly and pounded the short table with grievance, causing the porcelain on the table to jingle. I've seen through it. I'm old and can't enter Qin Ming's eyes. Qin Ming doesn't like me and wants to force me to death. Old Madam was originally thinking about what had happened and Qin Huayuan's reaction. Her mind was in a mess. Who would have thought that the Sun Clan would make a fuss? It was so noisy that she couldn't calm down and think about why her son had such an attitude. After hearing what she said, she felt even more disdain for her. If Sun Haihan wasn't the legitimate daughter of Duke Ding, she would have thrown this shit-stirrer out long ago. Old Madam angrily said, You're still shouting. I think Brother Ming wasn't wrong about you. Your rules are just like this. If you want to cry, don't cry here. Go back to Xingning Garden and cry. If you're still angry, you can pack up and go back to your maternal family now. Seeing Old Madam say such harsh words, Second Madam and Third Madam hurriedly came forward to persuade her. Qin Huaining cried and hugged the Sun Clan's arm. Mother, you should quickly apologize to grandmother. You can't go back to your maternal family. The Sun Clan's temper was impatient. She was hot-blooded and didn't think at all. She only acted according to her heart. After hearing Qin Huaining's persuasion, she stood up and slammed the table. Can't? Why can't I? If you have the ability, then let Qin Ming divorce me now. I can't give birth to a son. Qin Ming's concubines can't give birth to an egg. I know Old Madam has long blamed me. She doesn't like me anyway. If you have a candidate, then bring Qin Ming in to give birth to a son for him. I don't care anymore. After the Sun Clan finished speaking, she turned around and walked out. After taking 2 steps, she didn't forget to pull Qin Huaining. Sister Hui, come with mother. She didn't want to stay in the fu and be bullied. Qin Huaining's expression changed, and she hurriedly shook her head. Mother, don't go. Daughter also won't go with you. What a joke. If she went to Duke Ding's Fu now, she would be hated by Duke Ding's wife. However, the Sun Clan made up her mind. She had lost face tonight. She must make Qin Huayuan carry her back in a palanquin with 8 carriers. The last time she came back, she took the initiative to apologize. It was enough to make her angry. Could it be that she had to endure it every time? The Sun Clan didn't care about Qin Huaining's persuasion and pulled her away. Old Madam was so angry that she pounded the table and almost threw out the brass tobacco pouch next to her. Scram, scram, scram. This kind of upbringing, I've also learned something new. My Mengu'er is cultured and refined, educated and reasonable. How could I be so blind to bring back such a shrew for him? Second Madam inwardly rolled her eyes. Back then, wasn't it because she wanted to climb up the big tree that was Duke Ding's Fu? Why didn't she dislike her eldest sister-in-law for being a shrew when she borrowed other people's strength to climb up? Second Madam couldn't stand Old Madam's ungrateful appearance, so she didn't take any action. Third Madam immediately went forward to persuade Old Madam, coaxing her to not get angry. Qin Yining followed Qin Huayuan to the outer courtyard study. Just as he knelt down, he heard a servant come in and report, "Master, someone came in and said that eldest Madam wants to go back to her maternal home again. They're making a fuss right now." Mother Jean of Xingning Garden sent someone to reply, begging you to go back and take a look. Chapter 39. Qin Yining saw that her father was still angry, so she immediately knelt in front of Qin Huayuan and said in a low voice, "Daughter is stupid and fell into Prince Ning's trap." After saying this, she didn't say anything else. Qin Huayuan was waiting for Qin Yining to make a long and tedious apology, but she wasn't willing to say anything. It seemed like she felt that her only mistake was falling into a trap, but she didn't make the decision to save people on her own. Qin Huayuan was both angry and amused. This girl was still being stubborn in front of him? Just as he was about to reprimand her, a manservant's trembling voice entered his ears. In reply to Master, "There's a message from inside saying that Madam is about to leave the second residence and is asking for Master's instructions. Are you going to persuade her or not? At least say something." Qin Huayuan already had a sense of loneliness. When he heard that the Sun Clan was making a fuss again, he finally impatiently reprimanded, "If she wants to leave, then tell her to scram. It's best if she doesn't come back." Hearing this, the manservant finally realized how angry Qin Huayuan was. He hurriedly saluted and scampered away. Qin Huayuan supported his forehead with his large, well-defined hand. He leaned half of his body on the redwood square table beside him, looking very tired. Qin Yining felt even more guilty when she saw Qin Huayuan like this. It was her father who brought her home from Liang City. It was her father who saved her from the fate of being banished to a farmstead. It was her father who confirmed her identity as the daughter of the first wife. Her father was overflowing with talent and ability. He became the prime minister in his early 40s. With all of these added together, Qin Yining's admiration for Qin Huayuan deepened. She could see that her mother wasn't talented and had an arrogant temper. She had nothing in common with her father, which had already made him very angry. But because she was soft-hearted, she had brought even more trouble to her father. She didn't regret saving people, but she hated herself for falling into a trap. "Father, please calm down. Daughter knows her mistake." Her father was working hard outside, yet he still had to face a mess when he returned home. He also had to deal with the mess that his daughter had created. It was really her fault. At first, I couldn't bear to see the two innocent families suffer, so I wanted to try my best. Prince Ning happily let me be his maid. I immediately realized that I had fallen into his trap. In the future, your daughter will not be so reckless. I will definitely think thrice before I act. Father, please don't be angry anymore. What if you hurt your body? Qin Yining pressed his forehead against the floor. His attitude of admitting his mistake was very sincere. Qin Huayuan sighed softly. From Qin Yining's words, Qin Huayuan understood Qin Yining's idea. It seemed that this girl didn't think that saving people was wrong. Was he just angry that he had fallen into his trap? Qin Huayuan wanted to teach his daughter to clean the snow in front of your own door. Don't worry about the frost on other people's roof. However, he couldn't say such utilitarian words in front of his daughter. Moreover, Qin Huayuan had always felt that he was like a broken string that no one would listen to. He did not expect that the words of understanding would not come from his mother's mouth, nor from his wife's mouth. Instead, it was his own daughter who said the words that he liked to hear the most. Forget it. He had always been a forward-looking person. Since it had already happened, he wouldn't hold on to it and refused to let it go. Instead of complaining to the heavens and the earth, it was better to think of a way to deal with it. Thinking of this, Qin Huayuan said, "Servants, outside." A manservant immediately responded. Qin Huayuan looked down at Qin Yining, who was kneeling on the floor, and said slowly, "Take forth young miss to the ancestral hall to reflect on her mistakes. She's not allowed to come out until she has thoroughly read and memorized women's commandments and internal discipline. During this time, forth young Mrs. Maids are not allowed to serve her. They are all locked up in Snow Pear Courtyard to reflect on their mistakes." "Yes. Daughter thanks father for his teachings." Qin Yining kowtowed and respectfully retreated. The news that Qin Yining was locked up in the ancestral hall to memorize books quickly spread throughout the Fu. When the news reached the ears of the Sun Clan, who was still in front of the drooping flower gate, she was so angry that she immediately smashed the brass heater in her hand, creating a dent in the heater and spilling charcoal all over the floor. She's truly a jinx. Ever since she came back, she hasn't had a single day of peace. Mother Jean sighed and said, "Madam, please calm down. Let's not stay here anymore. Let's return to Xingning Garden first and discuss further." "No, wet nurse, don't try to persuade me. Right now, I'm just waiting for Qin Ming's response. If he doesn't want me to stay, then why should I stay?" The Sun Clan stubbornly stuck out her neck. Mother Jean felt a headache coming on. Originally, the first madam had nothing to do with this, but now she was making a fuss. Wasn't this just looking for trouble? Right at this moment, the Sun Clan saw Qin Ming's manservant sticking his head out of the half-opened drooping flower gate. The Sun Clan reprimanded him. "Little monkey, what are you dawdling for? What did your prime minister say?" The manservant didn't dare to repeat what Qin Huayuan had said. "If she wants to leave, then tell her to scram. It's best if she doesn't come back." With a smile, he said, "Madam, the prime minister is busy." "You!" The Sun Clan didn't wait for him to finish speaking and was already wiping her tears as she strode out. "Wet nurse, prepare the carriage. I'm going home. If he doesn't want me to stay, then what's the point of me staying?" Mother Jin's heart was very tired. She hurriedly went up to block the Sun Clan's path and didn't let her leave. She also hurriedly gave Qin Huaining a look. Qin Huaining, on the other hand, was constantly wiping her tears and couldn't see what was going on. After all, Mother Jean was a servant. Even the two head maidservants, Kailan and Kaiju, didn't dare to pull the Sun Clan's way. They could only circle around her and persuade her, anxiously stomping their feet. After this torment, the Sun Clan finally sat in the carriage. After they were seated, the Sun Clan finally remembered that Qin Huaining had just followed her to the drooping flower gate. She asked, "Where's Sister Hui?" Mother Jean sighed. "Miss Huaining only sent Madam to the second gate. She didn't follow you." The Sun Clan's tear-filled face revealed a shocked expression. "Didn't she just say that she wanted to accompany me back?" Mother Jean didn't answer. She was now beginning to feel that Duchess Ding's reprimand was correct. On this matter, although Qin Huaining was persuading the Sun Clan, it didn't have any effect. Instead, it made the Sun Clan even more irritable. "Madam, in the future, don't disregard your health too much. Anger is harmful to the body." Mother Jean originally wanted to say that she shouldn't trust Qin Huaining too much in the future, but she swallowed the words back down. These words didn't have any effect on a servant like her. She needed to report back to Duchess Ding. At this time, in Ci Shao Garden, the old madam wasn't as furious as she usually was. Instead, she dismissed everyone around her and only left Mammy Qin to talk to her. "Lu Juan, look at Brother Ming's appearance today. Is he angry at Sister Yi? Why do I feel that there's something fishy about it?" No one knew a son better than a mother. The first person in the old madam's heart was her most promising eldest son. She had the deepest feelings for her eldest son and understood him the most. According to the old madam's understanding, since Qin Yining had made such a big mistake this time. Qin Huayuan would only tell her about it and let her teach him. Why would he feel heartache for Qin Yining being slapped by the Sun Clan? Why would he take him away to personally teach him a lesson and punish him? In the end, did he like Qin Yining or not? Mammy Qin said, in this servant's opinion, Prime Minister should be teaching fourth Miss like a son. The old madam had already guessed it, but she couldn't grasp the main point. After Mammy Qin's reminder, all the intermittent thoughts immediately connected. She nodded heavily and said, that's right, Brother Ming really thinks this way. Otherwise, why would he value Sister Yi so much? Looking at it this way, although Sister Yi caused a big disaster, she also gained Brother Ming's favor. Not only is fourth Miss intelligent, but she also has courage and insight. Although she's a woman of the boudoir, she has a chivalrous spirit that doesn't lose to a man. Old madam, don't you think that fourth Miss's appearance and temperament are very similar to Prime Minister's when he was young? That's right. The old madam nodded repeatedly. Recalling her eldest son's appearance when he was young, it seemed that she had returned to those beautiful years. She was very fond of him. Brother Ming doesn't have a male heir yet, and he met a daughter who is so similar to him. It's inevitable that he likes her a little more. But Sister Yi is so audacious this time. After all, she's done something so wrong. Old madam, don't worry about it. Mammy Qin brought over a teacup and said with a smile, this servant feels that Prime Minister is very happy to solve his daughter's problem. Happy to do it? The old madam took the teacup and thought about her son. She also remembered the interesting things that happened when her late husband taught her son. She nodded in understanding. First, she laughed. Then tears filled her eyes. Ingguang doesn't have the good fortune. If he could see his children and grandchildren being so capable, I don't know how happy he would be. Mammy Qin saw that the old madam was thinking about the old master who had passed away, so she quickly comforted her in a soft voice. She comforted the old madam until her heart calmed down. Then, she said, Prime Minister let fourth Miss go to the ancestral temple to recite women's commandments and internal instruction. He also didn't allow the people around her to serve her. The old madam thought for a moment and said, since Brother Ming values her, she must have some benefits. The people around her aren't here, so you should make more arrangements these days. Instead of counting on Sister Yi's mother, it's better to count on the old world's red rain. Old madam, don't be angry. Your health is more important. As for eldest foreign and Prime Minister, it's just a small quarrel between husband and wife. It'll be fine in 2 days. The old madam was annoyed when she thought about the Sun Clan. She couldn't help but scold. I can't stand that arrogant appearance of hers the most. It's just that she has a good birth. She's just living off her ancestors' achievements. She has no talent and no virtue. How can she be worthy of my brother Ming? Mammy Qin saw that the old madam was angry again, so she couldn't help but comfort her with a few more words. After the old madam washed and went to bed, Mammy Qin called a daughter-in-law and a young maidservant from Ci Shao courtyard. She said, the old madam ordered you two to go to the ancestral temple to serve fourth Miss in her studies. Come with me. The daughter-in-law and her husband's family were surnamed Gu, so they were all called Gu family. The young maidservant was called Xiaoling. She had just turned 10 years old and looked very clever. The two of them bowed to Mammy Qin and ordered the older female servants to carry the bedding, charcoal stove, and other trivial things to the ancestral temple. The ancestral temple was located in a quiet courtyard in the southeast corner of the outer courtyard, next to the 3-story gate. The main room enshrined the memorial tablets of the family Qin's ancestors. The side rooms on both sides were often cleaned and tidied up. It was more than enough for people to live in. It was even more tidy and gorgeous than Qin Yining's snow pear courtyard. When Mammy Qin arrived, Qin Yining was already holding a book, internal training, and reading it. Chapter 40. Fourth young lady, what are you talking about? Mammy Qin was full of smiles. She bowed respectfully to Qin Yining and then pulled over the people behind her. Old madam is worried about you. She heard that master ordered not to let the people around you follow you to the ancestral hall, so she specially ordered this old servant to bring 2 people here. This is from the Gu family and this is Xiaoling. They will serve you here for the next few days. The Gu family and Xiaoling bowed respectfully. Qin Yining smiled at Mammy Qin and said, "It's hard for old madam to remember me." "Fourth young lady, what are you talking about? Old madam is your biological grandmother. How can she not remember you?" Mammy Qin turned around and ordered the Gu family and Xiaoling to bring people to take care of Qin Yining's room for the next 2 days. She then said, "I'll order them to bring the food boxes for the next few days. Young lady, you can rest assured. With old madam and Mammy Qin taking care of me, how can I not feel at ease? It's just quiet here. I can also concentrate on my studies." Seeing that Qin Yining's expression was normal and she didn't resent being punished at all, Mammy Qin only felt that she was quite generous. She really had the same temperament as Qin Huayuan in the past. Mammy Qin carefully instructed the Gu family and Xiaoling to serve her well. She also instructed the old servant who did rough work at the door, "Don't just guard the door and don't let young lady out. You've done your job well. It's important to serve young lady well. Even if young lady was ordered by the Prime Minister to recite books, you're still the Prime Minister's favorite." The old servant who did rough work was already solemn when she saw that Mammy Qin specially came. Now she was enlightened and repeatedly promised, "Don't worry." Seeing that everything was arranged properly and there were no more mistakes, Mammy Qin bowed to Qin Yining. "This old servant has to go back and serve old madam. It's late. Young lady, you should rest early." Qin Yining hurriedly returned the bow and said gratefully, "Thank you, Mammy Qin, for coming. This is this servant's duty." As the two of them chatted, Qin Yining politely escorted them to the entrance of the ancestral hall before returning to his room. When Mammy Qin returned to Xixiao Garden, she went straight into the main room to check on the night duty arrangements. Inside the warm room, Qin Huaining was kneeling on the chaise lounge by the window. He opened a small crack in the window to look outside and was able to see everything clearly. The Dowager Duchess is truly benevolent. She really treats her own granddaughter differently. Qin Huaining slowly closed the window and walked into the inner room with a cold smile. Mama Kai said, "Don't take it to heart. Mississippi Dowager Duchess has to put on an act. She needs to maintain a virtuous reputation. After all, this is such a big matter. So many people are watching." Qin Huaining sneered. "Even the wet nurse knows about the wild hoof. So many people are watching, but how come old madam and my father don't know about it? She dared to go to the prince's mansion to see an outsider. She must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. With such a foxy appearance, who knows what kind of despicable and filthy things she's done. Ever since she came back, she's been suppressing me and hitting me." The Dowager Duchess didn't punish her severely. When she made a mistake, she only punished her by reciting books. Even maternal grandmother gave her the Zhaoyun Si. She raised me for 14 years, but she didn't give me anything. Right now, the whole family is biased towards her. If I don't take advantage of the fact that she's locked up to make a move, I'm afraid I won't have such a good opportunity." Qin Huaining's eyes were gloomy. "Miss, the master is currently in a fit of anger. Do you want to wait for a while?" Mama Kai was a bit worried. Wait, wait. Until when do I have to wait? Don't tell me I'll just let that wild hoof step on me." Qin Huaining choked with sobs as tears streamed down her face. "Wet nurse, you know my pain the best. The humiliation I've suffered these past few days is more than what I've suffered in my entire life combined. How can I wait?" Mama Kai's heart ached when she saw Qin Huaining's appearance. She pursed her lips and thought for a moment before saying, "Don't worry, Mississippi. Actually, it's easy to deal with her. She's locked up in the ancestral hall right now, so we can't touch her. We just need to clip her wings so that she doesn't have anyone she can rely on." Qin Huaining's eyes lit up when she heard this. "Wet nurse, you have a plan?" Mama Kai nodded and said, "Isn't that easy? Miss, think about it. She's just returned to the manor and doesn't have any trusted aides by her side. If we cut off her most capable people, she won't even be able to protect the people by her side. Who would dare to do their best for her in the future? In such a large residence, if she doesn't have the support of her trusted aides, I think her life will be over." "Wet nurse, you're absolutely right. Without her most capable people by her side, she won't be able to make any waves. Won't we be able to control her in the future?" Qin Huaining leaned against Mama Kai's side and sighed. It's all thanks to you that I have you by my side. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what to do." Mama Kai was very moved and said, "Miss, you were raised by my grandmother. If I don't do my best for you, who else should I do my best for?" When she thought about Mother Jean, Mama Kai took the opportunity to say, "Just like how I do my best for you, my aunt also does her best for old madam. She only does as she is told. Miss, please don't blame her." Qin Huaining naturally understood Mama Kai's worries. That old woman, Mother Jean, had changed her attitude too quickly. But wasn't it because the Sun Clan's attitude had changed? Qin Huaining felt resentment in her heart. She blamed Mama Kai for not properly handling her aunt's affairs, but she couldn't say it out loud. She smiled and comforted Mama Kai, then turned to carefully consider how to make a move. Qin Yining spent her days in the ancestral hall memorizing books as punishment. First of all, the ancestral hall treated her well. Second of all, she had a photographic memory. Not to mention the thin women's commandments and internal discipline. Even the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was a piece of cake for her. The only downside was that the outside world was not well informed. She only found out that the Sun Clan had returned to her maternal home 3 days later when she overheard the Gu family and Xiaoling chatting in low voices. She felt that the Sun Clan's way of doing things wasn't good. Every time they quarreled, they would return to their maternal home with great fanfare. She had already seen them twice in the few days she had been home. Not to mention how much her in-laws' family disliked her. Even her maternal family was tired of her. The Sun Clan completely relied on their family background to wantonly squander the benefits that Duke Ding had accumulated for Qin Huaiyuan. Qin Yining felt that she could be considered to have a good family background. If she really did get married in the future, she should take this as a warning. She absolutely couldn't be as annoying as the Sun Clan. She didn't know how Snow Pear Courtyard was doing. However, her father had ordered all the maids in Snow Pear Courtyard to reflect on their mistakes behind closed doors. It was a kind of protection. If they didn't see anyone, there would naturally be no danger. Such peaceful days passed for another 3 days. During this period, Qin Jining had her adulthood ceremony and her marriage with the second master of the Duke of Jin. Anne's mansion was put on the agenda. This news was still known by the Gu family and Xiaoling's conversation. Today was the 7th day Qin Yining was locked in the ancestral hall. Qin Yining had just finished her breakfast and was rinsing her mouth with the hot tea brought by Xiaoling when she suddenly heard a sharp cry in front of the courtyard door. "Fourth miss, please save Ruelon." Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. She recognized that it was Qiu Lu's voice and hurriedly ran out. Weren't the maids in Snow Pear Courtyard reflecting on their mistakes behind closed doors? How could something happen? "Fourth miss, slow down. Be careful." The Gu family and Xiaoling hurriedly chased after her. Pushing open the courtyard door of the ancestral hall, Qin Yining saw 2 stout nannies holding Qiu Lu, one on each side. Qiu Lu's hair was messy and her face was full of tears. She used to be a steady and dull person, but today she was crying so hard. Seeing Qin Yining, Qiu Lu was about to speak, but her mouth was covered by a nanny. She was so anxious that her eyes were red, and she couldn't help crying. Her tears fell even harder. Qiu Lu must have risked her life to come here to report. "Stop." Qin Yining got rid of the Gu family and Xiaoling, stepped forward and grabbed the stout nanny's wrist. Immediately, the nanny was in so much pain that she screamed, "Oh my God!" The 2 stout nannies didn't dare to pull Qiu Lu anymore. "Qiu Lu, what happened? What happened at home? What do you think happened to Ruelon?" "Miss, Huaning's maid, Bitong, came last night and asked Sister Ruelon to go out. Sister Ruelon didn't go at first, but Bitong said something and she had to go in the end. Sister Ruelon didn't come back the whole night. Early this morning, Madame Dowager spread the news that C.I. Shao Garden caught a thief who wanted to steal something from Madame Dowager. The thief was caught by Miss Huaning's maid and said that the thief was Ruelon. Madame Dowager was furious. She ordered Sister Ruelon to be flogged 40 times and thrown out of the mansion after that. Miss, Sister Ruelon must have been wronged. 40 floggings will kill her. Sister Ruelon still has her mother and younger siblings at home. If anything happens to her, their family will be finished. Miss, please save her." Qiu Lu was kind-hearted and honest. She didn't know how to avoid people and told them everything while sobbing. The stout nannies, House Gu, and Xiaoling had already guessed it when they heard this. Qin Yining also knew that Qin Huaining must have taken advantage of her absence in Snow Pear Courtyard to take advantage of her servants. Not only did he want to get rid of her right-hand man, but he also wanted Madame Dowager to think that her superior was not upright so that Ruelan, the subordinate, would go astray. If Ruelan was really taken down by Qin Huaining, all her previous efforts would be in vain. If she couldn't even protect the people around her, how could she control them in the future? It wasn't easy for her to find a confidant. Would she have to fight alone in the future? No. Ruelan must be saved. Although Qin Yining was grounded to recite books, he was anxious to save Ruelan. He didn't care so much and was about to leave. Just then, a voice came from the entrance of the alley. "Miss, please wait." Qin Yining turned to look. It was Mammy Qin. He didn't know how long she had been here and how much she had heard. Mammy Qin. Qin Yining suppressed his anxiety and greeted Mammy Qin politely. Mammy Qin bowed and said solemnly, "Miss, don't forget that it was the Prime Minister himself who ordered you to be grounded here. Without passing the Prime Minister's test, you can't leave the Ancestral Hall. Besides, even if you go, how can you save people with your mouth and white teeth? There is conclusive evidence that Miss Ruelan stole Madame Dowager's jade bracelet. She was caught red-handed." Qin Yining heard this and felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over his head. Chapter 41. Seeing Qin Yining stop and ponder, Mammy Qin felt gratified. It seemed that Qin Yining wasn't an impulsive and reckless person. Mammy Qin had a good impression of Qin Yining in the past, and now she felt even better. Even if she only wanted to help, it was now 100%. "Young lady." Mammy Qin quickly walked to Qin Yining and said, "Young lady is a smart person and knows what is the most appropriate thing to do. Now young lady can't even protect yourself. If you don't listen to the Prime Minister's instructions and insist on rushing out, not only will you not be able to save Miss Ruelan, but you will also lose the Prime Minister's favor. Young lady, think about your future path." Qin Yining knew that Mammy Qin was right. Ruelan was caught red-handed. She had no evidence to prove Ruelan's innocence. If she went to save her, she could only beg the old madam for mercy. However, Qin Yining also knew that she probably didn't have much face in front of the old madam. But how could she leave her in the lurch? Even if Ruelan had made a mistake, she had already corrected herself and had always taken good care of her. At this moment, Qin Yining's expression was tense. She hated Qin Huaining like never before. Ever since she returned home, how many troubles had Qin Huaining caused? She had originally been considerate and felt that Qin Huaining was innocent when she was traded back then, so it was understandable that she felt a sense of crisis. However, no matter how much she felt, she shouldn't disregard the lives of innocent people just for a moment of pleasure. Ruelan didn't harm Qin Huaining, nor did she do anything to harm Qin Huaining's interests. Qin Huaining was even scarier than a wild beast for her to harm her life like this. Wild beasts ate humans to fill their stomachs. If they didn't eat, they might starve to death. However, if Qin Huaining didn't harm others, what would she lose? If she wanted to be doted on, she could be filial to her grandmother and mother. She could show off her talent and compete head-on. Qin Huaining wasn't willing to give his heart, yet he wanted others to treat him with sincerity. If he couldn't get what he wanted, he would feel resentful. If he couldn't beat others, he would go crazy with jealousy. He would disregard other people's lives for a moment of pleasure. Qin Yining did not think of herself as a good person. If someone tried to harm her, she would fight back without hesitation. But she would never kill innocent people just because of her status. "Thank you for your advice, Mammy Qin. However, Raylan had served me for a long time. She had suffered because of me. Now, I feel very guilty. As her master, if I can't save her even after doing my best, then that's my incompetence. But if I ignore her for the sake of my own safety, then that's my lack of virtue." At this point, Qin Yining suddenly felt physically and mentally exhausted. However, her weakness only lasted for a moment. When she raised her eyes again, her gaze was extremely resolute. "Mammy Qin, I'd rather be an incompetent person than a lack of virtue. After saying this, she walked out. Mammy Chin's admiration for Chin Ening in her heart was about to turn into spring water. She was a servant and had been on the same boat with the old madam for most of her life. They had experienced countless hardships together, so she naturally had this kind of friendship with the old madam. Now that she heard Chin Ening's words, it was tantamount to touching the softest part of her heart. Mammy Chin quickly grabbed Chin Ening's hand. "Miss, please listen to me." Mammy Chin moved closer to Chin Ening's ear and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Miss, if you go like this, it'll only bring you harm and no benefit. I can guarantee that Miss Raylan won't die. As for the other matters, as long as Miss passes Master's test and leaves the ancestral hall, we can consider what to do at length. Miss, think about what this servant said. Do you still want to go out now?" Chin Ening was stunned. If Mammy Chin could guarantee that Raylan wouldn't die, wouldn't it be more useful than her going out? After all, if she went out, she would only ask the old madam to spare Raylan's life. As for clearing her name, she would have to find evidence in the future. Mammy Chin making such a promise was equivalent to doing what she wanted to do on her behalf. Last time, she and Chin Ening had to copy as punishment. It was because Mammy Chin reminded the old madam that the old madam wanted to increase the amount of copying. This time, she was locked up in the ancestral hall. Originally, the servants would flatter her and trample on her, reducing her food and clothing expenses. It was also because of Mammy Chin's personal instructions that she had these 7 days of comfortable life. "Mammy, you." Chin Ening was at a loss for words. After being stunned for a moment, she said, "Why is Mammy helping me like this?" Mammy Chin bowed to Chin Ening and said with a smile, "Miss is the old madam's granddaughter, so you are this servant's master. It is this servant's duty to do my best for my master. What's more, this servant is the old madam's person. What this servant does is also the old madam's idea. Miss, please go back. Today's matter will be treated as if it didn't happen. Miss, please focus on memorizing and never heard the movements outside." Chin Ening immediately understood the meaning of Mammy Chin's words. Mammy Chin came this time entirely out of loyalty to the old madam. On one hand, she wanted to help the old madam establish good karma. On the other hand, she wanted to help the old madam keep her subordinates in check and not let the east wind overwhelm the west wind. It should be known that, as the head of a family, it was not a good thing for any of her subordinates to act alone. This was the case in the imperial court, and it was also the case in the small family. It seems that with the old madam's temperament, she was able to stand tall in the family and become the old madam. Mammy Chin's wisdom, calmness, and loyalty were all indispensable. Chin Ening smiled and bowed to Mammy Chin. "Thank you, Mammy. I understand." "Miss, please don't be like this. This servant doesn't dare." Mammy Chin avoided Chin Ening's bow and turned to look at Xiao Lu. "Considering your sincerity, I won't fuss about today's matter. You should go back and reflect. As a servant, you should learn to suppress things and not make trouble for your master. Do you understand?" Xiao Lu nodded repeatedly, her face flushed with regret. Last time when she saved Miss Tang, she spoke too much, and this time it was the same. She knew that she had rashly caused trouble for the young lady. Fortunately, Mammy Chin was benevolent. "This servant understands. Thank you, Mammy Chin, for your teachings." Mammy Chin nodded and said, "Fourth miss, don't worry and go back to study." Chin Ening knew that Ruelan would not die because of this, and Xiao Lu would not be punished. So far, it was enough. The rest would have to wait until she left. If Chin Ening wanted to deal with her, it would depend on whether she was willing or not. In the past, she did not want to harm others, but when others bullied her, she had no reason to not fight back. Even though the situation outside was changing, the days in the ancestral hall were still peaceful. Early the next morning, the person who came to the ancestral hall to deliver Chin Ening's meal box was replaced by an old woman who was about 60 years old. Chin Ening felt that it was a bit strange. The old woman was wearing a new dark green cotton jacket with the latest style. She had a gold hairpin in her hair and a pair of twisted gold bracelets on her wrists. Judging from her appearance, she was a respectable person who did not need to deliver a meal box. Seeing Chin Ening, the old woman bowed respectfully and said, Fourth miss, nice to meet you. This servant's husband's surname is Jing, and I'm here to deliver your meal. Mama Jing, please get up. Qin Yining smiled and helped her up. Mama Jing smiled and handed the meal box to Gu Jia and Xiaoling. While the two went to set up the table, she whispered to Qin Yining, Fourth miss, this servant is in charge of the kitchen in the outer courtyard. Today, I received Master Zhong's order and came to deliver a message to you. Miss Ruelan has been taken to the cloud stepping and under the Zhao Yun agency. Her injuries are not serious, and they are all superficial wounds. She will be fine after applying some medicine for a few days. Fourth miss, don't worry. Qin Yining said in surprise, Mama Jing is working for the Zhao Yun agency? Fourth miss, this servant's son is now the third shopkeeper under Master Zhong. My whole family relies on Master Zhong's promotion. Now that you are the owner of the Zhao Yun agency, my whole family will rely on you more in the future. This servant is only here to deliver a message. It's not a big deal. Besides, this servant is old and plans to go home and retire. Qin Yining understood and said, I see. Anyway, thank you for coming here, Mama Jing. Miss, you are too polite. It's my honor to see you. Mama Jing looked around and lowered her voice with a smile. Master Zhong also asked this servant to deliver a message to you. His Highness Prince Ning impeached Imperial Tutor Chao in public a few days ago. It's not that no one impeached him before, but most people remained neutral. This time, when Prince Ning took the lead, many people who used to be neutral supported Prince Ning. His Majesty condemned Imperial Tutor Chao in public. He has been stripped of his position as the Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor and ordered to go home and retire. What? That old guy Imperial Tutor Chao fell like this. Needless to say, the original neutral people suddenly turned to Prince Ning. It must be because Duke Ding and Qin Huayuan were on good terms with Prince Ning. Did these people have an agreement with Prince Ning? Or did they choose to support Prince Ning because of the wind? No matter the former or the latter, the success of Prince Ning's participation was inseparable from the fact that she successfully rescued Tang Ming. Qin Yining never thought that she would be the fuse for Imperial Tutor Chao's fall. Imperial Tutor Chao deserved it, but his daughter was still the Empress. How would she deal with her father's fall? How would she deal with the culprits who caused her father's fall? Moreover, the position of the Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor was now vacant. The Emperor only had the Crown Prince as his successor. He would definitely find a suitable person to teach the Crown Prince. Then, who would be the new Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor? This person was definitely related to the direction of the Imperial Court and the lifeline of the Dian dynasty. Qin Yining didn't eat much breakfast. The news that Mama Jing brought shocked her. Moreover, Mama Jing's arrival also made Qin Yining realize for the first time that the Zhaoyun agency had a wide network and great ability. Regardless of how the Imperial Court changed, the Zhaoyun agency in her hands wasn't just a treasury. She was afraid that she could develop more uses for it. When she thought of this, Qin Yining felt her blood boil and she was full of confidence. Just like this, noon passed. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Gu family's people went to open the door. They saw Dowager Duchess's head maidservant Ji Xiang say with a face full of smiles, Lei Oi has become the Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor. He's already home. Quickly let fourth young lady get ready. Later, Lei Oi will bring the whole family to the ancestral hall to burn incense and inform the ancestors of such great joy. Chapter 42. Xiaoling and the Gu family's servant rushed to the Snow Pear courtyard to get her clothes and jewelry, while the other quickly served her to wash up. Not long after, Xiaoling came back with the clothes and respectfully served Qin Yining to change her clothes. Her attitude was even more cautious than a few days ago. Qin Yining thought it was funny that she had jumped from the Prime Minister's daughter to the Imperial Preceptor's legitimate daughter. She had risen in status, right? But she didn't feel proud. After all, the Demon Empress had such a background. In just a moment, it was lively outside the ancestral hall. Through the door, she could hear the servants' cheerful chatter. The Gu family servant and Xiaoling opened the door and immediately chatted with the servants who came to prepare. Qin Yining was a little curious, so she stood not far from the door and watched the people outside bring in incense, candles, and other tributes. She found that Bai Tong and Bai Tao, who served Qin Huaining, had also come. They were helping Ji Xiang and Ru Yi from Ci Shao Garden. She didn't need to think carefully to know what was going on. In terms of reputation, she was much worse than Qin Huaining. She had to learn more. Bai Tong and Bai Tao had already seen Qin Yining. Seeing her dressed up and waiting at the door, Bai Tong sneered. She is fantasizing that the first master will let her out. Bai Tong's voice wasn't loud, but she didn't deliberately lower her voice. The people around her heard it. They were busy with their own things, but their ears were erect. Bai Tao pulled Bai Tong. You don't want to live anymore. Why don't you live a good life? Why do you want to die? Don't pull me. Bai Tong shook off Bai Tao's hand and snorted. People say that if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. That bitch Ruelon could steal the old madam's jade bracelet. It can be seen that her master is not a good person. The old madam was kind and only beat her up and chased her out of the manor. If it was someone else, they would have beaten her to death. But there are some people whose subordinates have done such a disgraceful thing, yet they act as if nothing has happened. It's really shameful to look at. She had long had enough. Qin Yining had hit her and bullied her family's young miss several times. Now that Qin Yining was in dire straits, it would be a loss if she didn't take this opportunity to step on him a few times. It was said that Qin Yining was a barbarian. If she could provoke this barbarian to fight with her on such a good day, it would be even better. Her daughter would definitely reward her handsomely. Bai Tong was proud of her scheme, and the provocative look on her face became more serious. She said that she is the legitimate daughter of the first old master, but who knows what is really going on. Even the first madam doesn't like her, and she still acts like she is so noble. If you're so noble, why did you secretly run out of the manor to see an outsider and get punished by the prime minister to close the ancestral hall? To put it bluntly, she is just a barbarian who has not lost her wildness. She is full of the aura of a commoner, and she is brought into our manor like this. It will tarnish our good reputation. These words were very serious, and the people around heard it clearly. They also thought about Bai Tong's provocation in their hearts. There were also people who had heard of the heroic deeds of the fourth miss, and their eyes were already shining as they waited to watch a good show. But when everyone looked in front of the ancestral hall, they only saw Qin Yining's flower-like smiling face. On such a joyous day, I heard Big Sister Bai Tong's words. It is enough to see that Miss Huaining has taught her subordinates well. I don't know if Big Sister Bai Tong's words today were your own idea, or was it your daughter who taught you? Qin Yining was still standing in the same place with a smile on his face, but his eyes reminded Bai Tong of that night. When Qin Yining's fist fell on her body, it could be said to be cold and sharp. Bai Tong really wanted to fight with him with arms akimbo, but she had no choice but to admit defeat. Looking at Qin Yining's appearance, the corners of her mouth opened and closed, but she did not say a word in response. Since your Miss Huaining has not taught you the rules of being a servant, when I get Xian in the future, I will teach you well on her behalf. Qin Yining smiled slightly. Big Sister Bai Tong, just wait. Bai Tong could not help but tremble. Qin Yining's beautiful eyes looked around, and looked at the people who had just sneered, and said, Who else wants to learn with Miss Bai Tong? Just do it. The people who had just sneered at Qin Yining did not dare to breathe loudly now. It had nothing to do with them, so why did they have to provoke the fourth miss? Even if she made a mistake, she was still the legitimate daughter of Grand Preceptor Qin, and Qin Huaining was still an adopted daughter. Bai Tong was angry and afraid, and the feeling of being stared at by a wild beast climbed up her spine. She was so scared that she felt cold all over. She could not help but regret her impulse just now. She should have taken advantage of Qin Huaining's presence to show off. That way, not only could she gain Qin Huaining's appreciation, but she could also divert Qin Yining's attention. Qin Yining saw that there was no more trouble outside the door, so he lost interest in watching the show and went back to sit and rest. Not long after, Xiao Ling came to report, Young Miss, Old Madam, First Master, and the others are all here. I know. Qin Yining came to the courtyard and saw Second Master Qin Shuyuan and Second Madam Su supporting Old Madam, who was wearing heavy makeup, to enter the door. Third Master Qin Ziyuan and Third Madam Wang walked beside Qin Huayuan, smiling and chatting. Behind them, First Master Qin Yu and his wife, Second Master Qin Han and his wife, and a group of cousins all came. Qin Huaining and sixth young miss walked at the back holding hands, whispering something. They seemed to have noticed Qin Yining's gaze, and when they looked over, they sneered. The whole family was here, except for the Sun Clan. It seemed that the Sun Clan was still in the Duke's mansion and was unwilling to come back. Perhaps they were putting on airs and waiting for Qin Huayuan to pick them up. Qin Yining sighed helplessly, adjusted his mood, and went forward to greet old madam, father, uncle, and aunt. When Qin Huayuan saw Qin Yining again, not only was he not angry, but he also liked him a little more. If Qin Yining didn't go to Prince Ning's mansion to ask for people, those fence-sitters wouldn't have quickly taken sides, Prince Ning wouldn't have successfully defeated Grand Preceptor Chao, and he wouldn't have become the Crown Prince's Grand Preceptor today. Originally, as the Prime Minister, Qin Huayuan had reached the end of his official career. No matter how hard he worked, it was very difficult to make progress, not to mention that it wasn't easy to maintain his position. He didn't expect that the problem that had troubled him for many years would be solved by this little girl with the wrong move. It could be seen that this girl was not only intelligent and tactful, but also had great luck. Sister should have finished studying these days, right? You can move back to live in a little while. Qin Huayuan turned to old madam and said, I saw that Sister Yi's Snow Pear courtyard was located in a remote location, and there were many errands to run, so I gave my Yaoqin and Yuqi to Sister Yi. As for the monthly allowance, the Yaoqin and Yuqi will be counted in the study of the outer courtyard. When everyone heard this, they were somewhat stunned. Everyone present knew that there were 4 beautiful first-class maidservants in Qin Huayuan's study. They were all 15 years old, and they were respectively named Yaoqin, Yuqi, Ma Xiang, and Danqing after the 4 arts that they were good at. They only worked in the study of the outer courtyard and received a monthly allowance from Qin Huayuan. Their status was particularly high among the servants in the Fu. There were many rumors behind the scenes. The Sun Clan had been jealous of these 4 maidservants many times. Last year, Second Master Qin Shiyuan had taken a fancy to Yuqi and wanted to ask Qin Huayuan for her to be his concubine, but he was rejected by Qin Huayuan. Today, he had given 2 to Qin Yining all of a sudden. Qin Yining had Yuxiang gone, and Ruelan had been punished to leave. It just so happened that there were 2 fewer maidservants by his side. It was difficult for such a big figure like Qin Huayuan to notice that there were 2 fewer maidservants by his daughter's side and generously make up for them. What kind of father-daughter relationship was this? It seemed that they had all underestimated Qin Huayuan's love for his daughter. Wasn't it said that Qin Yining had made a mistake and was hated by Qin Huayuan, so he was locked up in the ancestral hall to reflect on his mistakes? Looking at it this way, it wasn't the case at all. Qin Huayuan's teeth creaked as he gritted his teeth. Qin Huayuan was giving face to Qin Yining in public. He wanted to tell everyone that she was his most beloved daughter. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.